Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another round of the Next Gen Racing PROTO GT3 Championship as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform as iRacing. Today it is the case, it is round number 7 of 12 and we are in the Italian circuit of Monza for what is expected to be a very fast, furious and slipstream centric round of racing. Indeed, we have a packed schedule for tonight as we always do, and let's take you through that schedule from start to finish. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST or UTC +1. In just under 14 minutes time, by the time I've gone through this schedule, it'll be the case that we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session for tonight. That'll be at 8 o'clock this evening. That'll be a 20-minute session for our drivers to set the best possible lap time they can to guarantee their place on the grid for the purposes of race number 1. Race number 1 will follow straight after. That's at 8:20 this evening, and that will be the sprint race, which will be all about getting to the front of your respective class and finishing the winner. And if you can get the fastest lap as well, that's an extra 2 points in the bag that goes towards your championship total. After that, we'll be taking a brief break before returning at approximately 5 to 9 this evening for the build-up to the feature race. That's the second of our 2 races this evening, and that'll be the race which has the strategic element in there in terms of that mandatory pit stop. Plus also the fact there's a reverse grid in play means that it's all about navigating your way through the order with pace, but also with smarts and nuance with regards to when do you decide to pit and when do you go for the attack versus when do you play it safe and just simply stay out of trouble. And that, of course, is going to be the big question that all of our drivers will need to look into today, where Monza being renowned for being a circuit which can generate very close racing, but also, as the classic motorsporting sentences go, Monza and turn 1. Those are the 2 phrases you never want to hear in a single sentence, because it will induce fear into even the most seasoned motorsport driver in both real world racing and sim racing. But still, we're hoping today for some fantastic racing action, relatively on the clean side we do hope, and we'll have to wait to see how it all plays on out. Now, tonight's broadcast focuses particularly on the Apex Racing Academy lobby. That is lobby 1 out of our 2 lobbies, and we can see that it is going to be the case tonight that all the racing action will centre around what is going to be the lobby sponsored by the Premier Coaching and Setup Support Service, but we'll come on to Apex Racing Academy in a short while. But before we do, let's take you through the media platforms for tonight. Tonight's broadcast is available on 3 media platforms. Firstly, you could tune in via Facebook. If you are a Facebook user, you can go to facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. Secondly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and check out NextGen Racing, and that's where you'll see this broadcast. And last but not least, if you are a Twitch user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and you'll be able to tune in there. Now, who is TX141? Well, that's me, your host and commentator for this evening and this series. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight. Now, we did talk briefly a moment ago about Apex Racing Academy, and let's introduce our title sponsor for this lobby. So, who are Apex Racing Academy, I hear you ask? Well, they're not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers, and features not found in other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times, and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week we host, or they host I should say, multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. And in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Why not sign up today at apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. Now, we're very grateful to continue working with Apex Racing Academy. Of course, we've worked with them as a sponsor and also a primary support organiser for the series that we've hosted at Next Gen on iRacing, dating all the way back to Season 1 of the GT3 Championship. And they're contributing to this championship, not just in terms of supporting the running of Lobby 1, but also in terms of contributing to the prize pool, whereby for the GT3 class winners in both the GT3 Pro and also the GT3 AM class, it will be the case that Apex Racing Academy yearly subscriptions up for grabs. going into the prize pool there. Meanwhile, our LMP drivers, our LMP2 Pro class drivers, will be receiving a portion of the cash prize pool, which is to be confirmed, but that'll be based on what is being put up by NXTGEN Racing as part of the submissions that our drivers had to make in terms of their entry fees, plus also the prize pool available within NXTGEN. But folks in Apex Racing Academy here, we're very grateful to continue working with them, and well, we'll have to wait and see who takes those Apex Racing Academy yearly subs away come at the end of the standings. Now, talking about the end, to get to the end, we of course have to go through 12 rounds, and as we can see here from the calendar, it is the case that we are now today round number 7. It is Monza, 25th of May, and well, we're now entering into the second half. We wrapped up the first half of the season last time out a week ago at Hockenheim in Germany on the 18th of May. Before that, in round number 4, we were at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Then before that, we did have a 1 week break, I should say, but it was 2 weeks between the Red Bull Ring and the preceding round in round number 4, and that was Daytona Road Course back on the 27th of April, where we held the first of our 3 super endurance rounds. And indeed, a fantastic fight in there, a single race and a 2-hour race at that led to quite the mix-up in the battles and the standings. And before Daytona, whilst the series was touring the North American continent, we were at Motorsport, or Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in full for what was round number 3, the roller coaster ride in Canada. And before that, in round number 2, it was the roller coaster ride of Road Atlanta, the American equivalent. And then we opened, of course, the season up at Watkins Glen all the way back on the 6th of April with some absolutely tenacious battling in what was definitely a round to set the foundations of the championship series. But now, in terms of today and looking ahead in terms of the further forecast, it is the case that after Monza today, in a week's time, we'll be heading to Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium for the second of our 3 super endurance rounds to wrap up the second third of the season. That'll be on the 1st of June, after which we'll be taking a week's break before returning as the 15th of June for Silverstone, heading to the British Isles briefly, before then making our way all the way across the Asia-Pacific region for Suzuka on the 22nd of June, and then it will be back to Germany, back to the European continent on the 29th of June for the Nürburgring, the Vidal GP circuit, if I understand correctly, and then the last round will occur on the 6th of July, and that will be at the French circuit of Le Mans, or Circuit de la Sarthe in full, for the third and final 2-hour super endurance round, and we'll bring the curtain down there and was expected to be an absolutely brilliant venue to bring it all to a close. But in terms of bringing everything to a close, it's only fair that we bring you some closure on the latest update on the championship standings. So we come across now to the classes, going through the LMP2 Pro class first and foremost. So as you can see, it is the case that Chris Daines continues to lead the championship now on 299 points with an advantage of 56 points over Gaz Williams. But really the question is, with Chris Daines dropping some key points in the feature race after a horrific moment which saw his LMP2 machine pick up major damage and go into the wall in the run down towards the hairpin at the Hockenheimring, will Gaz Williams be able to continue to build that momentum and close down on Chris Daines? Or will it be the case that the Danishman is able to reverse that run of fortune at the Hockenheimring and establish dominance once again? Don't count out Dan Skinner, however, in P3, were a great pair of results at the Hockenheimring, benefiting from where a lot of drivers got it wrong or made key mistakes, and in the end walking away with another great amount of points, taking up to 189, really the best of the rest, 10 ahead of Jamie Dory, who was looking on course to win in the feature at the Hockenheimring, only to lose it due to an incident with GT3 drivers. Robert Sunic, P5, not able to take to the circuit last time out and losing out on a critical opportunity there and falling down to P5 from P3. Adam Delmont picking up his first win in the series in the feature with those 25 points going into the kitty and 139 points. And in P7 through to P9 is Ed Lack ahead of Alex Everett and Phil McDougall completing those championship standings. Meanwhile, coming across the GT3 Pro Championship, it is the case that we can see a similar picture much like in the LMP2 Pro class. In our championship leader here, Matt Caruana, who did have quite an established lead, has seen it reduced as a result of the Hockenheimring, with Matt Caruana being involved in a number of incidents and also a couple of mistakes of his own, as I recall, and as a result, it has seen him lose some critical points, particularly post-race through stewarding, and therefore on 231 points now, the gap between himself and Matthew Hodges has been reduced to 19 points, and the CXR Project Black driver is really starting to close down the Roman Grosjean GTWR Academy driver in rapid order. And can Hodges continue to pile the pressure on today? Indeed, Gavin Gardner there, not to be counted out. Currently in P3 in a bit of a no man's land. He's quite the break away from the rest of the field, but he's still chasing after Matthew Hodges. He's 30 points down. Can Gavin Gardner for Rano Motorsport close the gap? Or will it be the case that Carmelo Mettello, P4, who picked up a superb pole position and the sprint race win, will he be able to reverse what was that misfortune in the feature race and put 2 solid results on the board given the Audi driver for DRS Esport is looking very strong over the course of the continental European circuits to date. Tom Edmonds in P5, only there on countback, unable to take part last time out and no points scored. And then Lee Horn in P6, the best part of 22 points ahead of Eduardo Francoshin. William Fall, Billy Fletcher and Callum Garton complete in the top 10. And outside the top 10, but not to be forgotten about, Jean-Louis Deschamps in P11 ahead of Stefan Albanese. Alistair Kerr making his debut in the GT3 Pro class last time out, of course moving away from the LMP2 Pro class and moving into the GT3 Pro class. And that has meant his points have been reset and he's had to put it all on the board. And he picked up that superb win in the feature combined with what was a second place in the sprint. That win being credited to him post-race, if I remember correctly, due to stewards' verdicts. And it's Maurizio Macconi and Maurizio Massi there, P14 and P15 complete in the standings. Meanwhile, in the GT3 AM class, the story here is a bit different compared to the other two classes, in the fact that Nigel Stock holds on to a lead by a tenuous margin of 4 points in a very close-knit rivalry with Matt Emmons. We saw the two of them come to blows at the Hockenheimring, but they put it behind them. They both agreed on what exactly happened, and it is the case we're expecting plenty more racing action between the pair tonight. In P3, and looking to try and close the gap to the top two, Matthew Addy on 187 points, who had a good run of form, a good consistent run of form at the Hockenheimring, but he needs to get up there and potentially get a win back on the cards, because otherwise he may have the risk of Stuart P. Taylor in P4 on 159 points, closing the distance. And Ben Payne only a further 17 points behind Stuart Taylor. Anything can happen in hunting down that potential third place in the championship. Outside the top 5, Darren Dotley 17 points behind Ben Payne in P6, with a great pair of results, including the feature race in particular. Morten S. Ustus unable to take part last time out at the Hockenheimring on 125 points based on countback down in P7. And then Scott McLean, Sean Cranley-Swash and Jochen Siegert completing the top 10. Stefan Rasmussen there in P11, Stefan Gamble Rasmussen as he's 9 in full, with Alexander Patak behind him in P12, Jordan Poe and Joseph McManus in P13, P14, and it's Mikael Andreasen and Callum Jenkins completing the standings there in the GT3 AM class. Meanwhile, in the Team Championship, or the Mark Sykes Designs Team Standings, we can see it is the case that RP Motorsport Pro-Am have retaken the lead of the Team's Championship by only a single point over Verano Motorsport, and Racing Team Astra, RTA Blue, in short, are right there behind them. The top three breaking away from the rest of the field and very close, only 5 points between P1 and P3, and you can imagine, depending on how the scores go over the course of the races tonight in both lobbies, remembering that some of these teams are split across both lobbies, whereas some teams are focused on a single lobby, this Team Standings Championship could flip at any moment's notice. And speaking of flipping things around, NXTGEN Racing will want to try and get themselves back into the hunt for the top three. They're on 466 points, only 10 clear of their sister outfit of NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK, and they'll both be trying to break away from the challenge by DB1, who on 442 points are not too far behind. We then do have a sizable gap of what is 49 points to changed by DB2 in P7, really the best of the rest there, and they're only in P7 based on result countback versus Racing Team Astra Team Orange, who are also on 393 points in P8, Team Racing Netherlands P9 and RD Simsport P10, but they are being hunted closely by Crest Autosport with Apex Tracks only 11 points behind. Excite Racing in P12 ahead of CXR Project Black, Hilliard Esport and DRS Esports LMS1, and it's RP Motorsport Senior in P16 on 280 points, 14 clear of Team Tetrarouge, who had a revival of fortunes last time out at what was the Hockenheimring, when there's TGC Racing in P18, Altitude Esports in P19 and Crest Autosport Ferrari taking the final place in the top 20. Outside the top 20, but not to be forgotten about, Hollerton Racing in P21. They're the best part of what is over 30 points ahead of MRC Team in P22, BRM in P23, and it's TGC Bottom Split Heroes and DRS Esport LMS2 who complete the team standings going into tonight's round. Well, we talked a lot about standings, indeed. We talked a lot about sponsors and also with regards to our schedule. And, well, let's come full circle to the circuit rat tonight. And that is Autodromo Nacional de Monza in full, or Monza as we know it in short. Located in and by the town of Monza in Italy, this circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, is a much larger circuit when it's combined with the Grand Prix circuit and also the Oval. But our drivers are just racing on the Grand Prix circuit that you'll typically see in series such as the GT World Challenge Europe and also Formula 1. Consisting of 11 corners, this circuit, as seen from the circuit map, is made up of major straights connecting some very heavy braking zones, whether it be at Prima Variante, Alternati Seconda Variante, or the two Lesmos, turn 6 and 7, and then we have the Serraglio Straight, which is the run from 7 to 8, all the way down to the third chicane, also known as Ascari, and then the run to Parabolica Curve all the way down to turn 11. 11, it is the case there's going to be plenty of opportunities for slipstream and also plenty of opportunities to duke it out on the brakes. And that's what it will all come down to today. Who's going to pick the right time to go for the move and brake out of the toe? Now, as for our rules for tonight, we see, as per usual, our drivers are running the iRacing sprint setup for tonight's races, whether they're in the GT3 or the LMP2 class. It is the case that in the sprint race, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and the grid shall be separated into car classes, starting approximately 5 seconds apart. As for the feature, the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race, with the grid being separated into car class, starting approximately 5 seconds apart, so the LMP2s will start 5 seconds clear of the GT3s. There shall be one mandatory pit stop requiring drivers to take on fuel, but changing tyres is optional, and that will be a big question tonight given those heavy braking zones and those sweeping right-handers, and each driver shall have one fast repair available to them in the feature. And we should clarify, we've been getting this wrong since the start of the season, but we're going to get it right this time. A driver in the feature shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25, not 20, 25 or more instant points. Well, with that, that's enough of rules and regulations. I think you all agree we're all here for the racing action, and well, we take a look down to the circuit now as our drivers are just wrapping up this final warm-up practice session here with only a few seconds to go as we see Joe McManus, or Joe McManus in short, making his way out of Parabolica here to complete a lap, and as he rolls on through. Is the case right now, the Irishman from TGC Bottom Split Heroes. Well, it is quite a crowded GT3 AM class tonight with 11 drivers taking to the circuit, including a new driver of Kevin Smith, who we shall introduce in due course. But a crowded GT3 AM class could be an opportunity for TGC Bottom Split Heroes to get some major points in the books. It's not just McManus, but also Jordan Pope. But there is the transition, ladies and gentlemen, to the qualifying session. And now it is 20 minutes where all of our drivers will be out on the circuit looking to get the best possible lap in. And let's see how they all get on. As the first driver to come out of the pits, it's NXTGEN Racing's Gaz Williams there, making his way down towards turn number 1 in very short order. But whilst we are waiting, we do say hello in the respective chats to KT Eames in the Facebook chat, also to Matt Emmons in the Facebook chat, Gaz Will, who I believe is cheering on Matt Emmons, and we've got quite a few fans of Matt Emmons there in the chat, which is great to see. Matt Emmons being the NXTGEN Racing with Sam Case's UK driver, and we do believe he's making his way out of the pit lane now in the Audi R8 LMS machine, the 2015 GT3 machine, of course, not featuring the upgraded variants of it, the Evo 1 or the Evo 2 in iRacing, but perhaps they'll come on through one day, but still in the traditional LMS machine, a very beautiful looking machine, I must say. Indeed, it does steal my heart a little bit with regards to the mid-engine rear-wheel drive German machinery powered by that V10 5.2 litre engine. As he's just right now letting some of the traffic go here, and I think trying to establish himself somewhere out in the order. It is the case that qualifying is going to be critical in terms of where do you place yourself, and do you try and find a teammate to work with to give you the toe on your lap and you swap it around. And we do know that in particular Gaz Williams and Jamie Dory do like to work together in the LMP2 Pro class, and this is something a number of drivers will raise an eyebrow at, not necessarily because it's illegal, but because of how strong their teamwork ethic is, and that was seen in the practice sessions yesterday evening where they were able to win some brilliant laps using the slipstream train as they make the way on through. And we also say hello to NXTGEN Ultra in the YouTube chat there, who I do believe is Kevin Smith, and we'll talk more about him in short order. But right now, we ride on board here with Gaz Williams as he goes on to what is his first flying lap of the session. And we ride on board with him to give you an idea of how close he's going to get to the back of Jamie Dory over the course of the lap as they make their way out the final corner and onto lap. So head across the timing line and down towards turn number 1, and going up from the gearbox to the top gear, that's 6th gear in these LMP2 Dallara P217 machines, building up to an absolutely sensational amount of speed, and looking for the brake marker, looking for that 150 metre board, and coming all the way down the gearbox here to first gear, attacking the opening pair of apexes, looking to straight line between the chicane curves, and accelerating out and up towards turns 4 and 5, up towards the second chicane. As he charges through here, going through turn number 3, and as he rolls the car through very gradually, just sensitive minor steering inputs here to pull the car through, and now straighten the steering up to 5th gear once again, and braking on down just before that 100 metre board, coming all the way down the gearbox to first gear and clattering it over the apex curves. Jamie Dory there getting it a bit wrong and having to jump out the way, not going well for the second chicane for Jamie Dory, and now Gaz Williams is on his own as he rolls to the first Lesmo, and in second gear uses the full runoff area there before making his way up towards turn number 6, and turn number 7 I should say, and as he do, he makes a very nice run of that, coming down to the second before charging up the gearbox once again, all the way down to what is Ascari, the third chicane. Going down the Clear straight here, not quite getting up to the top speed till we saw the start-finish straight, but close in 6th gear and braking it around the 100 metre board here, coming all the way down to second gear, going over the apex and immediately snapping the steering to the right before going back to the left here, flat out through the final part of Ascari through turn number 10, and now making his way down towards Parabolica here, completely flat out, looking to upshift as late as possible, and now getting ready to brake into Parabolica curve, looking for the 100 metre board, looking for the 50 metre board, braking about 70 metres, coming down to second gear, and as soon as he feels as though the nose is bitten in, he gets back on the throttle, full throttle here as he heads to the timeline. And what's it going to be for the opening flying lap of this session from Gaz Williams? He comes across the line and it's going to be a 37.259. Well, we've still got a lot of laps to coming in yet. It's the case he set the first lap. We see Chris Daines immediately striking strong. Now the first 5 drivers in the LMP Pro class to set a time with a 37.166, and Chris Daines does not have the comfort of what is a teammate in the same class as him able to give him the tow. So you can see what the Ferrano Motorsport driver's doing here is he's using the iRacing drivers, Skinner and Delmont, as a means of getting a distant tow, and he's crept up behind them as they both let him go. And of course, they can let drivers go around him. They do have to do it in a manner which is appropriate and safe, otherwise the stewards will frown on it very hard. And indeed, the stewarding team are going to be in full action this weekend after what was a difficult day for driving the stands last time at Hockenheimring. We do have to admit it, and so the stewards are going to be looking over the racing tonight with a very critical eye and keeping their eyes on exactly what happens. And there may be some very harsh penalties if drivers fall foul of what the stand is expected of them. But as we look from Chris Daines here, we look to our GT3s and Matthew Hodges and the CXR Project Black Machine, one of a limited number of GT3 Pro tries to set a lap time so far, a 49.243. We are expecting plenty more laps to come in, potentially 48s to come for our GT3 drivers in the Pro class, in particular Carmelo Mattello. Literally, as I say, that makes it a case that there's a 48.631 on the board now for the Audi driver, and Martello really did shine at the Hockenheimring last time out. He had a disaster of a feature race, but in qualifying and the sprint he was absolutely untouchable, and I really do think that this man right here is one of the big contenders which everybody's now got to worry about, for the simple reason that Martello seems to thrive on the continental European circuits. He didn't enjoy the American circuits as much. He did, to be fair, enjoy Watkins Glen in the season opener, but it was the case that Road Atlanta really took its toll, and so did the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. But now on European soil and in his home country, to be fair, Martello hailing from Italy himself. I'm not sure if it's his home circuit or whether he's a bit closer to, say, Imola or some of the other Italian circuits as he pulls over, but definitely looking good here. And the same for Edoardo Francescin as he makes his way around through turn number 3 and rolling up towards the second chicane. Now as he comes on through here, you can see some of the LMP2 machines, and that is Dory and Williams making their way on through, and now they are split between the Audi driver Francescin as he makes his way on through with the first 5 minutes of this qualifying session complete. As he comes charging on through here, it is the case that we can see he's pulling up to the pits, and we do look to Matt Evans in the meanwhile, who's currently the provisional fastest in the GT3 AM class. Now if you are tuning in on Twitch, YouTube or Facebook, do not be shy, feel free to say hi. It's the case we can see all 3 chats. We believe we can see all 3 chats, although we may miss an occasional message or two due to some technical glitches that occur every so often. But do let me know who you're cheering on if you haven't already, and also give me your predictions of who you think could win out, not just in qualifying, but in terms of in the opening sprint race here. As we do see Emmons now has a bit of competition in terms of lap time with the Irishman and Darren Doherty here, who's gone at provisional pole in the GT3 AM class with a 49.517. And the Irishman here, of course, Darren Doherty, we did speak to him last time out in the post-round interview at the Hockenheimring, and it was the case that he was saying to us, Doherty, that he really feels as though he wants to get that win on the board. We saw in round number 5 how it all came down in the feature to literally the final lap, and Nigel stopped putting on pressure, and in the end, Darren Doherty making that critical mistake, locking up under braking and going overly deep into a corner, which saw him spin and finish P3 when he could have been on course for the win. Last time out at the Hockenheimring, it was the case once again. He was pipped to the post by Nigel Stock with only a few minutes to go, less than 5 minutes to go if my memory serves me correctly, and I think Darren Doherty will feel that tonight is the opportunity to put that win on the board. He will want to get his maiden win in the series, and as he makes his way down in towards the sky right now, it is the case he is looking very fast, so he's got clear track in front of him here, so I do wonder whether he might just be trying to put in a couple of laps to feel where the grip is, get the tyre temperature up, as Matthew Addy there spun coming out of what is a scar. He's got it very wrong, Matthew Addy, but the car's just parked in the middle road. I suspect he'll be spinning it around in due course, and there is Matthew Addy, but definitely Darren Doherty looking to achieve something big tonight as Addy jumps to the pits. But as he does, we do look back to our LMP2 class drivers, and we do look to Ed Black here as he makes his way, or Ed Black in short, as he makes his way down towards turn 1. And as he heads into the braking zone here, the 6R Project Black driver has been in a little bit of the midfield over the course of the last few rounds, and he hasn't always been able to participate in every single round, but we do love to see it lack out on the circuit. Indeed, one of the much-loved drivers down in the paddock. He may not be the fastest, but he's loved for his gentlemanly nature, and also the fact that he is a very hard but fair racer, much like his teammate Phil McDougall, who you see there, the two drivers swapping places. Phil McDougall lifting off, coming through at turn number 3, and as they make the way through, turn number 3, of course, being known as Curva Grande, and we should really refer to the corners by their names rather than their numbers. It is a little bit more sensible given the nature of Monza, and whereas our drivers make their way on around right now, it is the case. If you do want to know about the chicane names, the first and the second chicane, we'll take you through those chicane names in very short order when we ride on board with one of our GT3 drivers for a lap, and we'll see Gavin Gardner here making his way through turns 4 and 5, so we won't be riding on board with him, but who we can ride on board with, and we haven't seen him for some time, is Tom Edmonds from the Altitude Esports team. He will take us on through as he peeling into the pits. He is unfortunately peeling into the pits. Well, that's a bit unfortunate because we would have loved to have seen the Porsche 911 go around and be in action, but we now have got a bit of time before we do get to ride on board with one of our GT3s. So instead, we take a look to Ed Lack here, who's actually having quite a bit of a good run in his qualifying lap. He's set 3 personal best subsectors. It is the case, there's normally 3 sectors according to F1 standards, but iRacing does split the circuit up into 6 subsectors by comparison, and as he makes way down, in fact 5 subsectors I should say, not 6, my eyesight deceives me, but Lack comes across the line there and moves from P7 to P4 on a 37.463, and as we reach the halfway point of this qualifying session, a lot of rubber now going down on circuit, and it is the case that our drivers have been given that opportunity to really now start to maximise that lap time. And well, we talked about trying to ride on board with a GT3. Here is Gavin Gardner for Ferrari Motorsport, currently down in P6 in the Ferrari 488, and as he rolls on throughout the final corner, he peels over to the right here. Tell me he's not coming into the pits. He's coming into the pits as well. My goodness, it is the case that we seem to be jumping on every driver who wants to come in. What about Stefan Albanese here, the Italian driver? Well, surely he's not coming in. He's staying nice and wide. Let's ride on board then with Stefan Albanese, getting that wonderful onboard view over the shoulder, over his right shoulder, as he makes his way across the timeline there, completing one lap and now going once again. Saying all the way down to turn number 1 and 2, heading down to Rettifilio chicane here on Variante del Rettifilio in 4 as it's known, turns 1 and 2, breaking all the way down that 150 metre board, down from 6th to 1st gear, and as he rolls it through, taking as much apex curve as he dares to try and lift the car up and rotate it under a gentle amount of power, and now charging up towards turn number 3, Curva Grande, flat out through turn number 3 here, hooking it nice and tight to the apex and just gently releasing the steering when he feels he's cleared the corner, and you see the car drifting a bit into the centre of the road before he points it back to the right hand side, gets him ready for what is the second chicane here, coming down to the Regia chicane, breaking all the way down from 6th to 2nd. He loses the rear end there and rolls the car off circuit as Albanese, just taking a bit too much apex curve. That's very unfortunate for the Italian driver who was looking to be on quite a monstrous lap, but he's got to now do it all again, and those curves, they really do take away from each and every lap that our drivers do try to put on in as he makes his way on around. And well, meanwhile, we do now look to another of our GT3 drivers to see if they can give us a lap, and we see Matthew Hodges once again in the rear of the picture, getting it wrong at Ascari. I think really feeling the pinch of Ascari, but we ride on board now with Sean Cranley Swash as the Lamborghini Huracan driver takes us through and on to a lap. He doesn't peel on in, in fact he peels over to the right here to shorten his run to the timing line, and that means he's on a fast lap and he's going to improve. He moves from P7 to P4 and he goes on to another flyer here, so let's take you through the lap. It's coming down the Lamborghini Huracan Evo GT3, looking at that 150 metres board and coming hard on the brakes here, and going all the way down the gearbox in very rapid order. Overcooked it a little on the brakes, so just a bit deep, but he does bring it back together as he exits out of the chicane, coming out to Rettifilio, and now up towards Curva Grande he goes. He's got a lot of traffic there, and in fact he has to peel out the way. It seems as though whenever we try to get a lap with a GT3 driver at the moment, they do get a little bit shy. Alternatively, it's just our bad luck. So we're going to just try and avoid doing the lap for a few moments, and hopefully a little bit later on we can bring you one of our GT3 laps. But in terms of introducing the driver, let's introduce our newcomer for tonight. It is a driver representing NXTGEN Racing, and that is Kevin Smith, as you see him make his way out of Ascari here in the Porsche 911. And he is joining for the remainder of the season, so he's joined us for the second half of the season, which means he's got quite an uphill slope if he wants to compete and finish high in the GT3 AM Class Championship. But still, he is here to stay and he is here to compete. He's decided to go with a Porsche, as he loses the rear end there coming through. What was the final corner coming through Parabolica, and of course the Porsche very sensitive on that rear end. But we do wish Kevin Smith the best of luck for tonight, and he will look forward to seeing how he gets on as he just holds the car there for now, given the fact it's got a bit wrong before reversing on out. But as he gets ready to go once again, did I have the opportunity, so you may be asking, to catch up with some of our drivers in the build up to tonight? I must admit it was the case that I only had the chance to catch up with one driver. Most of our drivers very tight-lipped and focused on practicing in the build up for tonight, and also just thinking about their strategies and focusing. The one driver who I did have the chance to catch up with as he was getting into the car was Nigel Stock, and the Mercedes-AMG driver here, who is your championship lead in the GT3 AM class right now, was saying he kept his thoughts quite short, but to be fair, Nigel Stock is quite concise, but he knows what he's talking about, and indeed that's why he's the GT3 AM championship leader. And he was saying that for tonight he just wants to try and keep his nose clear and get as many points as he can. And what he means by that, and it's absolutely fair, Monza is one of those circuits whereby you can be the fastest driver in qualifying by the best part of 3-4 tenths of a second, but that will mean nothing in the race unless you can put at least 2 seconds of a gap between yourself and your pursuers, and that is due to the slipstream factor at this circuit. We've got so many straights, and the tow has fell all the way out to approximately 1.5 to 1.7 seconds from machine to machine. Particularly in those LMP2 class machines, it's felt up to 2 seconds. In the GT3s, it's around 1.5 to 1.75 seconds. That is the case, as we see Stock peeling into the pits here, that unless you can get a sizable gap to your opponents, you'll not break away, and you've got to be smart about when you decide to try and go for the offensive, or when you decide just to back off and let the driver go. And as we can see, a driver who's trying to go for it right now, Callum Jenkins here in the colours, which I found out the other week, ladies and gentlemen. I should point out we haven't seen Callum Jenkins for some time, but we are seeing him now. The privateer here, for those of you of what is a BTCC disposition, so that is the British Touring Car Championship disposition, alternatively looking at some of the support races that support British Touring Car and also British GT. You may notice those colours are quite similar to a team known as Team Hard Racing. Or indeed, if you spotted that, that is correct. Those are the cars of Team Hard Racing, and I believe he is flying the flag for Team Hard Racing as a privateer here. Callum Jenkins, of course, a real-world driver as well. I've had the opportunity to see him do some real-world racing at Brands Hatch, and he's a sensational driver, and he's racing in the GT3 AM class here, and he's been racing since the start of the season as he makes his way into Ascari here, rolling through in the number 19 machine, and well, keeping it nice and compact there, and that's what exactly you need to do in the Porsche. This is the ultimate handling car within the class. In real world, it is the case that this car is known actually for some very sensational straight line speed, but the balance of performance used in iRacing is a little bit different from real world. Indeed, the balance of performance, where it's in a real world series, alternatively a sim racing series, changes from month to month, from year to year, and it is the case at the moment the Porsche is predominantly a handling car, although it can do very well in the tow if it is building up some speed, and it can be very aggressive when it brakes as well. But that rear end can be very loose, and that's what we saw Kevin Smith suffer from earlier, as we see it is the case there, Jenkins peeling into the pits. But we do look meanwhile back to our LMP2 class drivers, and in particular we can see here is the case that Robert de Sunic, who has returned as of tonight, as we do say hello to Billy Goat Boy in the YouTube chat there, and looking forward to seeing what can happen tonight. And we are looking forward to seeing what can happen in the commentary box here. Indeed, I'm sure plenty of you guys and girls are excited for what can unfold. We do say hello to you, Billy Goat Boy, and I hope you're doing well. But as I try to make the way on through with 4 minutes of this qualifying session to go, right now it's looking the case that Chris Daines is provisional pole for the LMP2 Pro class by 1.5 tenths versus Gaz Williams. But what will Robert de Sunic have to say about it? Well, he's currently down in P8. And that was not an improvement from Robert de Sunic as he goes into another lap here. Perhaps that's a warm-up lap, perhaps that's a build-up lap. Now, what we mean with a build-up lap, and it is the case in these qualifying sessions, that Robert de Sunic may have been trying to look for the ideal space to go onto an attacking lap. He may be trying to get his eye in, feel the rubber, feel the grip that's available on the circuit, also get a gauge for that surface track temperature, and then go onto a lap. The problem he's now waiting quite a bit of GT3 class traffic, but to be fair, he will have to go around the outside through Curva Grande, but the reverse of it, as he comes up to Regia, will be that if he gets it right here, he'll actually get a little bit of a boost in terms of the slipstream coming onto the small straightaway. As we see diving out of the way that last minute was one of the DRS eSport LMS machines. I'm not sure who that was, whether that was Albanese or not, but they've jumped well out of the way and parked it off circuit. But you can see here, Robert de Sunic really on a mission to try and put in a lap now, and as he comes through what is the second of 2 Lesmos here, coming through at turn number 7, it is looking as though looking smart as he heads down the Sergio straight and up towards Ascari. And of course, flying through Ascari here with these LMP2 machines having so much downforce on them, it will look as though he's just glued to the tarmac as he rolls it for a bit of braking into a turn at number 8 and then charging through the rear. You can see they're sliding out as he comes through 9, just nicely on the balance of adhesion. separation in terms of the car starting to lose the rear versus having the grip, and that's exactly what you want there. You want the car to start rotating around through Ascari, then you've got it dead on right. If it over-rotates, however, you get that oversteer through the apex, then you've gone a bit too far, and that's what Matthew Hodges was suffering from earlier, the rear end coming loose. But as Robert Sinnott comes out of the final corner, he's improved in the first two subsectors, but he comes to line in, does he throw himself in P8? He's coming through. He's gone up to P7 ahead of Phil McDougall, but Chris Daines, meanwhile, has just put in the fastest lap in the class by 1.5 tenths at 1:36.742. But we must now, with 2 minutes to go, jump back to what is our GT3 class drivers, and we jump to what is Nigel Stock here as he makes his way down the back straight up towards Parabolica. He's got a bit of traffic in the form of Kevin Smith, so this may not be a lap that's going to be uninterrupted, but I can tell you one thing, he was interrupted earlier by jumping into the pits, but he won't be interrupted this time as he's going a bit slow at the moment, Tom Edmonds, but I think this is to give himself plenty of track space, unless something's gone very wrong with Edmonds' car. He's really creeping along here, but Edmonds, I think, waiting to be the very last guy to go along, unless there's a mechanical failure on the car, but he's just rolling very slowly right now. You can see the long traffic jam behind, and in that traffic is Alistair Kirk, the BMW M4 driver you can see there, and he's one of a limited number of BMW M4s. The other drives, Mortoness Oosterhoos, as they make their way into pits, but you see Edmonds having to duck out the way very quickly. And as they make the way through, well, Alistair Kirk is going to be leading what is a huge pack of drivers on around for TGC Racing. He does have his TGC Racing teammates behind him as they make the way through. And we ride on board with Alistair Kirk, who hopefully this time will bring us a GT3 lap that doesn't end up with an interruption, whether it's a mistake or 13 backing off. So heading down towards turns 1 and 2, heading down towards Bretsfield chicane. He'll look for his brake marker. The 150-metre board here, heavy on the brakes. The BMW being one of the fastest cars on the straight line, brings it down to the trail brake, and he snaps it loose. And I think it's the commentator's curse for every driver that we try to ride on board with. It just goes wrong in some description or another, but you can see behind him Stuart Taylor soldiering on all the same in the TGC Racing at Porsche 911 and the GT3 AM class. And as we ride on board with him, hopefully he will not suffer from the commentator's curse here as he makes his way down towards Regia, coming into that braking zone. He's got Alistair Kirk right in front of him to give him all the time. Keep in mind that BMW is a couple of miles now faster down the long straight, and that will help out Taylor in the long run here. He's currently P9 as he rolls it through the first of the two Lesmos down in third gear, and as he makes way out using the full run off there. You see Kirk ducking out the way now into the second Lesmo, into turn 7, braking at the 50-metre board, downshifting to third, just to dabble the brakes in the flick as he makes his way now down at Serraglio and up towards Ascari. And as he powers up the gearbox here, up into 5th gear, he'll surely be looking at the prospect of going up into 6th if there's enough straight way to do it. I think he's going to stay in 5th or just hit 6th as he goes into the corner, stays in 5th and brakes down the 100-metre board down to 3rd gear, hits the apex there very sharply, raising the car into 2 wheels for a brief moment and roll on through that very nice run through the Ascari chicane by Stuart P. Taylor. No fear whatsoever in the car as he makes his way now down towards the final corner, down towards Parabolic. It's been a good lap so far, albeit he's actually been down in the opening half of the lap versus his personal best. He's got it all to do. A little bit of a disconnection there in terms of his connectivity. He's having some slight connectivity issues there. That's very unfortunate, but he comes on through here. And what's it going to be for Stuart Taylor once he gets to the end of the lap? Will he improve from P9 with the checker flag now in this qualifying session? He crosses the line. And in the end, it's enough to move into P8, but it's not a major imprint of 50.236. But we are expecting the Porsche 911s to struggle here by comparison to the rest of their competitors, as we still got a few drivers making their way on around. And we can see here it is the case that Matthew Hodges making his way out of the final corner. And as he rolls on through, it is looking as though Matthew Hodges may be an improvement lap. He's currently P6 in the GT3 Pro class. He crosses the line. Will it be enough to get him into the top 5? It is an improvement. It's P3 for the CXR Project Black drive, with Stefan Albanese the only other GT3 Pro driver yet to finish a lap. Ed Lack, meanwhile, his teammate in the LMP Pro class, comes to the line. And Lack has not improved over the course of the lap whatsoever, so I think Lack's had to abort that one. He slams the brakes on there. We've still got a couple more drivers coming through. Stefan Albanese here, and then behind him is Callum Jenkins to complete the qualifying session. And Albanese is coming into the pits. What about Callum Jenkins? Jenkins comes to the end. He may be on an improving lap. He makes his way to the timing line, and as he does it enough, it is enough to improve to P7 in the GT3 class. A good improvement there by Jenkins at the finish. But in the end, in terms of qualifying, it is Gaz Williams who takes pole in the LMP2 Pro class. It is, what is there? Carmelo Martello, who takes a pole position in the GT3 Pro class, and Darren Doherty, who takes his maiden pole position, if I remember correctly, for the purposes of the sprint in the GT3 AM class. So it does look as though Darren Doherty definitely fighting back strong tonight and looking to right the wrong of not picking up 2 wins on the bounce through simple mistakes in the feature. Will he be able to pick up a win in the sprint? That would be a huge achievement. But now we do wait for the transition over to the grid for race number 1. As we do wait, we say hello to Magia and Nesta98 there in the Twitch chat. Good evening to you, Nesta. I hope you're doing well. And now let's take you through that grid for the build-up for race number 1. So Gaz Williams lines up on pole in the end, taking that pole position in the LMP2 Pro class by a margin of only half a tenth ahead of Chris Daines, if that. The two of them locking out that front row by a margin of almost 8 tenths of a second. Would you believe it? It is the case. That front row is 8 tenths faster than Jamie Dory at line up on row number 2 alongside Ed Lack in P4 for CXR Project Black. Adam Delman and Dan Skinner, 2 Excite Racing drivers, make up row number 3 with Robert Asunik, P7 for Team Racing Netherlands, and Phil McDougall for CXR Project Black, the last but not least of our LMP2 Pro Class drivers for the qualification. Behind them are GT3s. Start off with Carmelo Martello on overall GT3 pole and GT3 Pro Class pole. The DRS Esports LMS1 driver really coming to form, and he had just pipped Tom Edmonds to pole position by 6 thousandths in the end. And the Porsche driver, well, it may be the case, the Porsche is a bit of a slouch on the straights, but Tom Edmonds is definitely not a slouch in getting it to go around this circuit fast. Behind them on row at number 6, Matthew Hodges and Gammon Gardner, the Verona Motorsport driver, doing well at the end of the qualifying session, as did Matthew Hodges, to be fair. Both drivers improving massively as the session went on. Behind them, on row at number 7, Alistair Kurt for TGC Racing, alongside him Edoardo Francescin, the Italian there for DRS Esports LMS1. And then behind them, starting off row at number 8, is the pole sitter for the GT3 AM class. That's Darren Doherty, the privateer, and he's joined up by Nigel Stock, his main rival in battling for the wins of races. They're the Crest Autosport of Apex Tracks driver. Matt Emmons kicks off our 9th row for NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK. He's joined by Sean Cranley-Swash from Verona Motorsport. And our 10th row is made up of Matthew Addy and Stefan Albanese. Joe McManus and Callum Jenkins make up our 11th row, the TGC bottom split heroes driver, pipping the privateer to the post. And it's Morten S. Husus who lines up P23, starting off what is our 12th row. Stuart P. Taylor alongside him for TGC Racing. And it's Jordan Pope and Kevin Smith who make up the final row of the grid, our 13th and final row. 26 drivers taking 2 at the tarmac for race number 1. And now we get ready to go racing. But meanwhile, as the rolling start procedure gets underway, we do now get ready to go. And it is the case all drivers will be creeping around, and there will be a gap of approximately 5 seconds between what is the GT3s and the LMP2 drivers. As we do look to the blimp camera briefly, albeit it is the case that our drivers are hidden a little bit by the forestry on trackside, but everybody making their way on through. And indeed, unfortunately, the blimp not in the right place right now, but hopefully it will move to a better location later on. So we do look to some of our closer cameras instead, and as the GT3s do get underway as well, you can see it is the case that right now, as all the drivers make the way on down here, we get ready to go racing. It's not long to go, and when we do go racing, it will be Gaz Williams who takes us away for the initial green for the LMP2s, and it'll be Carmelo Martello who takes us away to the initial green for the GT3s. And who will come out on top by the end of it, as Billy Goatboy in the YouTube chat says there, these races will not be over until the last lap on the last corner. And indeed, you are 100% right there. It is the case. It's going to be all about the draft, and it takes one driver to pick the right time to go for that all-important move at the end of the race on those final laps. But we now wait to be taken underway. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 here at Monza in the Apex Racing Academy lobby, with Gaz Williams getting a slightly better start than Chris Daines as they all come charging down towards turn number 1. You can see everyone jostling in position here. Particularly Ed Lack trying to look for the move. There's a tap on the back of Chris Daines down into the corner, and actually gives Chris Daines a little bit of a nudge forward. And Chris Daines takes the lead through that brief tap on the back, just giving them the momentum into the corner. Meanwhile, the GT3s all come on through here, and as we look to the blimp camera, everybody has made it through safe and sound this time around through the opening corners. So turn 1 Monza has not struck this time, but as they all come roaring through at Curva Grande, it is the case that everyone's settling down into an order. And meanwhile, our leader Chris Daines here overall with a brilliant start there, and I think he will be breathing a sigh of relief that he's got that position. And now they all form into formation. A bit further back, Darren Doherty holds the GT3 and lead still versus Nigel Stock. Nigel Stock not able to gain that ground early on as they all all make the way up towards the Lesmos now, in towards the second portion of the circuit here, really the most technical portion of the circuit, sector 2, and as they roll their way out, it is the case, no major overtakes at this point in time. Some places were gained at the start, but it is the case that only minor gains here and there, and everybody right now just calming down as we see in the rear of the picture there. That is Martinez who's going a little bit wide, getting unsettled through the Lesmos. I'm not sure if he was receiving some contact there from a driver, but it's gone a bit wrong for Martinez, and he's now got himself back up to speed, down into P10 in class. He's dropped a place since the start. He actually made some ground, as meanwhile Callum Jenkins here battling side by side with Joe McManus down into Ascari, and McManus holding the position very well as they make the way through. But as they come towards the end of the opening lap here, we do look back to the leaders overall. So after one lap, it's Chris Daines leading as he goes very close to the pit wall there, ahead of Gaz Williams in P2, followed by Jamie Dory P3, then Adam Delmont P4 as they all weave on the straight to break the toe. Dan Skinner P5, followed by Ed Lack in P6. Lack and Skinner battling here down into the opening chicane, and as they come down into Rettavilio, Lack's going to be squeezed, but it's the case that Skinner there just cuts him off enough to hold him at bay as they make the way through. Meanwhile, Phil McDougall's gone off and he's cut his way through the barriers there. He will get a slowdown, but he's taking the safety road, and then the GT3 class, it's Carmelo Martello leading, as meanwhile, a bit further back, Gavin Gardner and Matthew Hodges battling down into the chicane. It's side by side on the exit, but Matthew Hodges is going to have much more space to play with him running out, and as a result, Matthew Hodges takes the place off of what is Gavin Gardner there. He's now up into P4 in class after what was a P3 start, but he's lost out to a degree, and now he's having to try and recover this race as he goes a bit further on. Meanwhile, a bit further back down the order, I can tell you that Kevin Smith has dropped a few places down to P10 in the GT3 AM class, but we stay focused here on Matthew Hodges as he tries to hold at bay the massive swarm of GT3s behind him, and to be fair, it's only Gavin Gardner, the GT3 PROs immediately behind him, and then he's got the GT3 AM leaders trying to catch up, as we see a slowdown penalty there for Matt Evans. He's pulled off racing line, and that'll be for cutting the chicane at some point, or cutting the critical apex too hard, as he makes his way through the first of the two Lesbos here, and now battling with Stuart Taylor, and the Porsche driver's going to try and dare to go around the outside. That is risky, and as they make the way through, they give one another the space, but I do wonder whether Stuart Taylor might be thinking back after that, should I have really tried to go round the outside through Lesbo 2, given the fact it's such a tight apex? Well, he's dared to do it, and he's still battling for position here, is Stuart Taylor, as they make the way down into Ascari, and Matt Evans is going to pin him to the outside here, but Stuart Taylor goes to the cutback, and Matt Evans holds it very nice there and keeps it online as they roll their way through Ascari and down to the Parabolica curve here. But TGC Racing, Stuart Taylor really going fighting and not letting the second place championship driver of Matt Evans phase him whatsoever, as meanwhile Sean Cranley Swash here battling with Matthew Addy for P3 in the class, and as they make their way in, Matthew Addy out-braking Cranley Swash, who had to brake slightly early due to the fact he was on the inside line into Parabolica curve. He's run a little bit wide there. He may have to lift off slightly to give some time back, well, that'll be a track limits infringement, no doubt, as he did put all four wheels beyond the white line as they make the way on to another lap here. We still do have the best part of what is 11 minutes of racing to go. We're only a couple of laps in, but this race is delivering so far as they make the way on down, and a bit further up the road we can see that Matthew Addy, well, not Matthew Addy, Darren Doherty I should say, battling side by side with Nigel Stock as they roll through, and Nigel Stock gets the lead of the GT3 AM class there. That's a critical move for the time being, and I think Stock will feel that Mercedes has got the grunt to be able to hold on to the lead. He's going to make Darren Doherty now work really hard to come back, as that change the lead between the Englishman and the Irishman. Now will they play out the reverse here, coming down in towards Regia chicane, turns 4 and 5. Doherty takes a little sniff to the inside, but he doesn't go for it, and then he decides not to send him, and Stock loses it under braking, locking the brakes up, and that is a very rare mistake we've seen for Nigel Stock, to lose it there after being in such dominant form for some time. But meanwhile, Sean Cranley Swash has found his way past Matthew Addy, and a bit further back, I can tell you that Matt Evans has just found his way past Stuart P. Taylor, as we're to understand it, and well, a little bit of drama there for Nigel Stock, who's rejoined the race all the way down in P11. He's gone from the front of the field to the back of the field in the GT3 AM class. As they all come charging on down Circular this time round, it is the case we look a little bit further up the order to Gavin Gardner here, who is chasing after one at Matthew Hodges as they come roaring on through Ascari, taking a bit more apex curve by comparison, and as they make the way down towards Parabolica curve, Gavin Gardner just watching and waiting now. And of course the two Ferraris here, equal machines. This is a fixed setup series. There's very little they can change on the car, but I think the brake balance, if that, and as the drivers make their way down into the braking zone here, I think Gavin Gardner's got to wait for that opportunity, because if they battle too hard, they will lose the option to chase after Alistair Kirk, who's in P3, and they won't want to lose that. As we're hearing that Eduardo Francochin has retired from this race. We're not sure what's happened to Eduardo Francochin, but it is the case the Audi driver from what is DRS Esport LMS has had to make an early retirement. But meanwhile, speaking of battles, we see that Dan Skinner and Adam Delmont have traded places here, and I think it is the case as they make the way down. We look a bit further back, and that's Robert Sunik battling side by side with Ed Lack into Lesmo 2. And as they come out of the corner here, now Lack's going to try and come on back here. As you can see, really tucked in close behind Robert Sunik as they make the way down Sarah Clear. Robert Sunik holds the race in line. He gives the space on the inside to Lack. Now, will Lack fully commit? He's going to go for it, Ed Lack, as they make the way in. And, well, Sunik looks at the cutback here, but being quite charitable there to give him so much space. And Lack took it, but to be fair, perhaps he doesn't want to battle because he knows if they do battle, they're only going to cost one another time in the hunt for P5 upwards, with Delmont not too far up the road, only 1.5 seconds up. And we see there in the Facebook chat from Martin Brinkworth, one of the senior administrators, indeed one of the stewards for this series, and senior administrator of Next Gen Racing, clarifying that Frankishin did not take the start, disconnected in qualifying. I'm very sorry to hear that, and I do hope that Frankishin's okay, and we can see him return for the purposes of the feature, given the fact he has got a lot of pace in that Audi. Fingers crossed we can see Frankishin come on back. That's unfortunate to hear that disconnect going in to race number 1. Well, it was disconnecting quali, but meanwhile Lack battling, trying to hold Robert Sunik at bay here as they come through what is Rettivillo, and as they make the way out of the chicane, it is the case now 7 minutes in. We're almost at the halfway point here. I think the battle for P6 and LMP 2 Pro class is only intensifying, as meanwhile the battle for the lead in the GT3 Pro class here, Carmelo Rotella, your current leader, as we ride on board the gearbox of the Audi ARA LMS driver, and as he makes his way out of the final corner, well, I can tell you that Tom Edmonds has been pretty much rolling in the wheel tracks of Carmelo Rotella for the entirety of this race so far. As you see a brief little weave there on the straight to the race 9 now for what is Carmelo Rotella. Tom Edmonds inching closer. You can see where the Porsche is hitting that wall in terms of its top speed by comparison as they make their way down to the braking zone. I think Edmonds here just trying to stay as close as possible, literally within arm's reach of what it is at the back of Martello's car, so that way on the final lap, or the final 2 laps, he can look to try and go for that move. And really it will have to be the final lap for Tom Edmonds, because of the fact that Porsche will not be able to defend on the straight versus the Audi. The Audi does have the legs over the Porsche, but as they make the way up towards Regia, heading up towards turns 4 and 5, the second chicane, they've also got Alistair Kirk only a second behind and closing up as they make the way under braking. No change here, but I can tell you there's been a bit of a major incident. Callum Jenkins has run across the road here, and Jordan Popenbolt and Morten Oosthuus involved in an incident as well and having to jump to the pits. So let's take a look at what happened between Jordan Pope and Callum Jenkins. Well, this was only months ago. Now you'll see Morten Oosthuus as the lead of this pack as they came down to the braking zone. That's Stefan Albanese, and as they make the way on through, Albanese, oh, there's contact between Albanese and what is Oosthuus, and then we can see that Pope in contact with Callum Jenkins, and I think they all stacked on top of one another. We refer to that as what is the concertina effect under braking, but it's the concertina effect from the incident, and that's what saw the turn. But we take a look back to the incident as from what was Morten Oosthuus' perspective. We ride on board the gearbox here of Oosthuus as he made his way on through. He's going to get that tap on the inside there from the Audi driver of what was Stefan Albanese, which is very unfortunate. Albanese getting it wrong. He's had to jump to the pits, but now we do look back to those live pictures, and Callum Jenkins has got it all to do now from last of the running places in the GT3 AM classes. Meanwhile, Speed has got it all to do, and not much time, less than 6 minutes to go. It is the case that Nigel Stock here has got to try and find his way past Jordan Pope and also Kevin Smith to get himself up into what would be the top 7 in the GT3 AM class, which of course is not where he wants to be. And these are some critical points that are being dropped right now as he looks to move up the inside of Pope. It's going to be a short and sweet pass up the inside into Parabolica curve, and Stock there getting it done, and I think he will now have the tyre of Kevin Smith as they roll on out of Parabolica. I think Kevin Smith will know that Stock's got a lot of pace under it. He'll try and defend it, Kevin Smith, there's no doubt, but at the same time I think he'll appreciate that Mercedes is a monster on the straights. Indeed, in fact we can see the Lamborghini there, Jordan Pope coming on back, and they're going to go side by side here. Both of them will want to try and get the move on Kevin Smith, and Nigel Stock looks at the inside here, more to defend than to attack. Kevin Smith goes a bit deep on the brakes. This is really going to hurt Stock on exit. As you can see, they all bunch up behind Kevin Smith, and if the lead driver gets it wrong through Rettivillo, you can see just how difficult it is then for the drivers behind to try and get the run out of the corner as they make the way on through. But meanwhile, speaking of making the way on through, we do look to our LMP2 drivers and talk about stacking drivers up right now. That in the foreground is Jamie Dory, P3 in class, with the pace 6.3 seconds of Gaz Williams in P2. But behind them, that's Adam Delman, that's Dan Skinner, Robert Sunik and Ed Lack. They are all separated by only the best part of 3 seconds from P3 to P7, all hunting after that final spot on the podium as they roll on through here with 4.5 minutes remaining plus the final lap. And you can see how they're all just trying to take a little bit of liberties with running the wheel wide on the exit curb there of where's the Regia chicane, trying to use as much of the space as possible in order to improve that lap time. All pushing very hard indeed, but of course put too much wheel in the gravel, and you're going to lose out. You're not going to get it. You see Jamie Dory there deciding to pull off racing line to try and break the toe, and he is trying to break away now as Jamie Dory, as we see that gap has come up to half a second, but it's not enough to completely clear the toe, as we're hearing that I think Kevin Smith's had a bit of an incident further down the order, and well, we will take a look. Oh goodness me, that's Kevin Smith in the wall there, as we see just parked up in the wall at turn number 9, reversing now, and he's got a driver coming on through as he comes on out, and that's why I was getting a little bit worried there, because I think it was Phil McDougall was coming through, but no contact between them. But meanwhile, the change for the GT3 Pro Class lead has occurred. Tom Edmonds is now leading Ferocious Esports ahead of Carmelo Metella for DRS Esport LMS. Let's take a look at how the move was made. This is in the run down towards turns 1 and 2 here, down in towards Rettifilio's chicane. Under braking Tom Edmonds as close as he'll ever be, under braking up the inside and hangs it nice and onto the inside at turn number 2. And as he emerges there, he takes the position, but to be fair, Carmelo Martello not coming back at it hard. I think Martello recognising the fact that they've only got Alistair Kurt the best part of what is 8 attempts behind him. At any moment he can get involved, but meanwhile, I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen, lots happening here, and we've got Robert Sunik and also Dan Skinner both beached up there on the sausage curve of what is turns 1 and 2. Now, what on earth has happened here? So making their way down towards what was the Rettifilio chicane. So we're going to see that is in the foreground. That's Dan Skinner as they come in. Robert Sunik cooks it too hard on the brakes. There's contact there as he's just gone a little bit deep, and Nigel Stock getting caught up and has got nowhere to go. He parks the car. I think he's actually stalled it. And Callum Jenkins also going to a rear, and that's a very unfortunate incident. And Robert Sunik there just missed his braking point and locking up. And well, now it's the case that Dan Skinner is out of this one. He's in the pit lane right now. He's been towed back, as has Robert Sunik. Both of them beached up on the curb, but we do look to what is here Chris Daines right now, our leader in the LMP Pro class, as he makes his way all the way down towards turn number 11. As he does here, where he's got an advantage of what is 1 second from Gaz Williams. So you can see the NXTGEN Racing LMP2 driver making his way to the inside there, upward into what was parabolic curve, trying to go past what was Cranny Swash, and also adding the GT3 class and getting past them quite safely. As they make the way down the start-finish straight here, we do say hello to Billy Bob Ray in the Facebook chat, cheering on TGC Racing, and also Chris Daines. And also we say hello in the YouTube chat to 6000 and Kashmir fan, and we do hope you're doing well, Kashmir, and well, we do miss seeing you out on circuit. As meanwhile, it is the case of Cranny Swash battling with Matthew Addy. As we see here, the two Britons going toe-to-toe. Cranny Swash gets the place up the inside into Rettifilio. Behind them is Matt Emmons, but this battling is only releasing Darren Doherty, who's now 2.1 seconds up the road. You saw him briefly make a cameo through the camera there as they came in towards what was Curva Grande, and as they now roll them through here, it is the case that the Briton of Cranny Swash under that pressure from Matthew Addy, but he will have a bit of breathing room, or will he? No, Delmont knows he's got to go on through if he wants to chase down Dory, and Cranny Swash there goes a little bit deep under braking into Regia, and now it's going to be Matt Emmons who tries to capitalise here as they all roll up into the Lesmos. We ride on board with Matt Emmons as he comes through turn number 6, coming through Lesmo 1, up towards Lesmo 2 they go, but you can see he has to fall back a little bit there with the dirty air of the two GT3s in front of him, taking away his front end turning. As he makes his way out there, runs a little bit wide, but Vife Matthew Addy has a really bad run out to the corner. They're going to be side by side now. The two teammates of NXTGEN Racing with Sam Case to UK, and we saw all the way back in the season opener at Watkins Glen what happens when they battle hard, and as they make their way down into Ascari, neither one of them's going to give way. It's side by side. Oh, not again! It's happened again, and Emmons with a tap with Matthew Addy, and Addy in the end has been left at the wayside there. He's P5, but surely that is going to have to be another conversation for the team. I mean, it was right on the limit between the two of them there. They both wanted the position, and well, the two teammates have made contact once again, and well, we look from them with only a few seconds of this race to go to what is Alistair Kurt right now, who's on the charge in the GT3 Pro class, chased after Carmelo Martello and Tom Edmonds. The top three in the GT3 Pro class only separated by a second, if that. As it is the case, it is now 15 minutes complete, and the checkered flag will be out the next time everybody comes on around as they make the way on through. But as they come charging round through at Curva Grande here and up towards turns 4 and 5, we can see it is a situation now. Alistair Kurt not quite close enough as they make their way into the braking zone, but as they roll them through, here it is the situation where Alistair Kurt will wait for that opportune moment. If Martello and Edmonds battle, he will capitalise on it as soon as possible. As we're hearing that Dan Skinner has left the pit lane to complete this race under his own gumption, But meanwhile, we do look to our two LMP 2 Pro Class leaders, Chris Daines in the foreground, Gaz Williams in the background as the camera pans round as they go down Seraglio here. And well, Daines looking very strong at this point in time. I think feeling comfortable as Williams gives that pursuit after him as they roll him through Ascari here. And well, Williams was on pole by only 44 thousandths, but in the end, Daines with a good start and a little bit of a bump through Rettivio was enough to give him that advantage. And since taking the lead of this race, he's not let that advantage go. And as he comes through the final corner here, well, there's the question about whether he'd be able to bring that momentum back after a difficult day at the Hockenheimring. Well, the answer is definitely yes, because he comes to the finish line, the checker flag waves, and it's Verano Motorsports' Chris Daines from Denmark who takes the win overall in the LMP2 Pro Class ahead of Gaz Williams in P2, and then it will be Jamie Dory who crosses the line to complete the LMP2 Pro Class podium. Meanwhile, in the GT3 Pro Class, it is going to be Tom Edmonds who takes the checker flag, the winner, ahead of Carmelo Mettello, and it'll be Alistair Kirk P3. And as for the GT3 AM class, well, he wanted a win, and he's going to get it because he comes to the line. Darren Doherty, the privateer, takes the win in the GT3 AM class ahead of Sean Cranley Swash P2, and Matt Evans in the end will have to settle for the final step of the podium in P3. But what a brilliant race to open up tonight's proceedings at Monza. He battles up and down the field, a few unfortunate incidents there, and well, those drivers affecting those will be looking to try and pick up the points in the feature and well, see where they're placed with regards to that reverse grid. But it is the case, some great racing all around as our drivers now go on to that cool down lap. Well, we've still got some drivers to finish their race, and indeed I think we do have always Robert Asunik, the last of our drivers, who needs to come around and take the checker flag. In fact, it's Jordan Pope who needs to come around and take the checker flag. Well, Kevin Smith into the pits. He's registered on the pits on my timing screen, and Mortonustus unfortunately with that retirement due to the contact with Stefan Albanese, and we can see Mortonustus in the YouTube chat there, Kashmir fan, saying with regards to that contact, which it was a very unfortunate, Morton, and I do hope things can turn around in what is race number 2 for you, because we would love to see the Heliod Esport BMW right up there as it used to be, indeed, in your very capable hands. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we do also see what is Jordan Pope making his way across the timeline. He's coming into the pits to do so, and that will be his race all said and done. And well, as our driver's coming around right now, of course, it will be one big day for Tom Edmonds as we see the GT3 Pro driver here coming to where's the final corner here on the cool down lap. He'll be very pleased with what he was able to achieve in the GT3 Pro class there, taking the move for the win versus Carmelo Mettello with 3 laps remaining, and then from that point onwards not relinquishing it, just having enough to stay ahead. And Altitude Esports will really appreciate that effort from the Briton. And well, as they all come around, it is also, you can see Jamie Dory here creeping on through P3 in the class. He'll be happy with that one. A good start to his proceedings tonight. And well, Darren Doherty, what else is there to say other than it's the third time of trying being in that leading position, and he's found a way to finally bring it home on the top step of the podium. And I think that's going to be a very happy man in the cockpit of that Lamborghini. But with that in mind, let's take you through those race results subject to any assured inquiries, ladies and gentlemen. So, after race number 1 here at Monza in the Apex Racing Academy lobby for round 7 of the Proto GT3 Championship, as brought to you by NXTGEN Racing, it is the case that, subject to stewards' inquiries post-race, Chris Daines, the overall winner and the LMP2 Pro Class winner by a margin of 1.4 seconds ahead of Gaz Williams in P2, and Jamie Dory completing the LMP2 Pro Class podium. Adam Delman and Edward Lack completing the top 5 for the LMP2s ahead of Phil McDougall at P6, and then we come to our GT3s, where P7 overall, the winner in the GT3 Pro Class was Tom Edmonds by a minor margin versus Carmelo Mettello, and Alistair Kirk following in close behind to complete what was the GT3 Pro Class podium. Matthew Hodges and Gavin Garner completing the GT3 Pro top 5, and then in P12 overall, Darren Doherty coming home with the win in the GT3 AM class, his maiden win in the series, ahead of Sean Cranley Swash and Matt Emmons rounds off the GT3 AM podium there in P14 overall. Joe McManus and Matthew Addy completing the top 5 of the GT3 Pro Class, ahead of Stefan Albanese P17 overall, then Stuart P. Taylor P18, and as we go further on down, it is the case Nigel Stott P19, a very unfortunate race for Nigel Stott in the lead and made that major mistake. That error coming through at Regia, this corner we're looking at in the background right now, the chicane turns 4 and 5, losing the car and dropping all the way to the back, but a good recovery to P19, overall that being P7 in class, and he'll take that going into the next race ahead of Callum Jenkins, the privateer there at P20, Dan Skinner P21 ahead of Robert Asunik P22, the two LMP2 Pro Class drivers, both in that instant with Robert Asunik making the contact with Dan Skinner down into turn 1, and both drivers becoming beached on the sausage curbs there. Very unfortunate, a bit of an odd incident to say the least, but it's happened and they'll move forward. Jordan Pope P23, Kevin Smith P24 in his debut there overall, translating into what was a P10 in the GT3 AM class, and then Morten Jesus with that unfortunate retirement from the contact with Stefan Albanese, and Eduardo Frankishin with that inability to get to the grid due to connectivity issues, completing our standings there P26. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is race number 1 of our races at Monza complete for this evening, and we'll be back in approximately 5 to 10 minutes time for the build-up for race number 2 of round 7 of the Proto GT3 Championship here, and well, brought to you by NXTGEN Racing, this lobby, the Apex Racing Academy lobby, Lobby 1. We'll be back in short order to bring you more racing action and the build-up to the feature. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for the second race of this evening in round number 7 of the Next Gen Racing PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you in collaboration with Apex Racing Academy, because given this is Lobby 1 that we're taking a look at tonight. Now, of course, Apex Racing Academy is not just a setup shop, but a service dedicated to making you better at iRacing, with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies, and working with Apex Racing Academy will see you connecting with pros like never before. And if you want to know more or want to sign up today, go to apexracingac.com. That website again, apexracingac.com. But of course, in our schedule there, which we can see in the centre of our screen, we're now moving into the feature race, which is due to kick off in the next part of approximately 4 minutes or so. So a little bit behind schedule by 5 minutes compared to the anticipated 9 o'clock this evening start. But still, 5 minutes today, I think, is absolutely fine, given the fact we've got plenty of racing action on the way. And right now, our drivers are making their way onto the circuit and looking to get themselves all set for that second race tonight, that 60-minute race where there's going to be a huge amount on the line with regards to strategy. And well, we'll talk a bit more about strategy in a second, but let's talk a little bit about Carmelo Mettello firstly, in the fact coming home in P2 in the end in the GT3 Pro class in the sprint after what was a dominant qualifying session. And in the end, whilst he was leading for the majority of the race, Tom Edwards was able to get close enough, get ahead, and then keep Martello at bay for just long enough to hold him off to the line. Now Martello will have it all to do if he wants to pick up a win here today. To be fair, at P2 is nothing to be upset about, but he will want the win, given that Martello right now, I would actually put odds on the Italian being one of the favourites to do very well indeed over the course of the proceedings. But we will wait and see how he gets on in the feature. And well, Tom Edwards as well will be looking to try and make it 2 out of 2, and Alistair Kirk, who's currently in the pit lane, would love to pick up a win. But in the downtime, we can see a number of you having a little bit of conversation in the respective chats there. We did see in the YouTube chat Darth Vader there saying not able to race tonight, but excited to be back for Spa in a week's time. Won't be in contention for the overall championships, but can still try to grab some last bit of points in the last few races. And that's what it's all about. If you're not able to make certain rounds in the championship, and I've been there, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you, well, I've had 2 missed rounds in the sim racing championship, but I still turn up when I can, because it's all about the fun and the friends you make along the way. Of course, if it's a very serious championship, so if it's something along the lines of what is the Fanatec GT World Esports Championship, and when I say serious, to be fair, this is a serious series, but what I'm trying to get at is essentially when a huge prize pool is on the line, there's potential to be representing all sponsors and things along those lines, then you really are encouraged and pushed, whether you're a privateer or a team driver, to take part in each and every race. And to be fair, a good number of our drivers here are professional esports drivers or looking to join professional esports teams. Their race as a privateer, but we do have a blend of drivers here, some who are more casual drivers and some who are more professional. That's the great thing about us at Next Gen Racing. We do try to cater for everybody, whether it's the Pro all the way down to the Rookie and the AM. And that's why, of course, we have the GT3 Pro and GT3 AM classes, and we, of course, in this series have the LMP2 Pro and the LMP2 AM class, albeit the LMP2 AMs are based in the IMB Raceware lobby. That's Lobby 2, which is racing currently as well, but you'll see that lobby being broadcasted as a post-round broadcast on Friday later this week. But we can also see there, with regards to Gumball HS73, asking the question about how did Dan Skinner do, and we did clarify that Dan Skinner was in that unfortunate incident with what was Robert Dasunik, where the two came together after Robert Dasunik missed his braking point and locked up into turn number 1 into Video, and it ended up with both drivers becoming beached up on the sausage curbs in the run through the chicane, and therefore they both had to jump to the pits. But Dan Skinner coming home P21 overall, P7 in class by the finish, and well, we'll be waiting to see whether he's able to pull out a big result in order to make up for that. Indeed, his teammate Adam Delman right in the fight for the podium with Jamie Dury, with the incoming home P4 behind Jamie Dury. Can Delman make it a podium this time around, given the fact that he did, of course, pick up that maiden winning class last time in the feature at the Hockenheimring? Indeed, a very well-versed driver in the feature races, those longer races, as he makes his way on through. But we can also see Mark Harris-Smith there in the YouTube chat saying sad to be watching rather than racing. We'll be back next week. Great racing next week expected, and great racing this week so far. Indeed, the racing has been fantastic. We had a couple of incidents which, to be fair, and I can understand the frustration of those drivers who were involved in those incidents. And I do particularly feel for what was the GT3 AM driver, Morten Üsthuus, so I'm not sure if they're able to get the car back out into the field in time. Hopefully they are able to get the Hilliard Esport BMW M4 out there. But I'm involved in that unfortunate contact with Stefan Albanese, which sent the car well off into the gravel trap out of what was Rettifiglio, as we do see there a driver deciding to do a little bit of the navigation through what is the off-track chicane, and I believe that was one of the CXR Project Back LMP2s. and I think that might have been a Phil McDougall, unless I'm very much mistaken. That was Phil McDougall, and I think he's just repeating there what happened in the race. But Phil McDougall, to be fair, learning as to where the grip levels are, and you want to push hard in this practice session before you go racing, because in this session you can afford to make a mistake. You can't in the actual race, of course. But as he makes his way on through now, we do complete the final warm-up session, and it is time for us to set the grid for the purposes of race number 2. So let's take you through that grid order once again. So as they line up for the reverse grid here, we can see that starting off on pole for the LMP2 Pro class, it will be Robert Destunic from Team Racing Netherlands. He is joined on the front row by Phil McDougall from CXR Project Black. Behind them, it will be Edward Lack in P3, the CXR Project Black driver, and he is joined by Adam Delmont in P4. And then we do have Jamie Dorey and Gareth Williams at P5, P6. Chris Daines at P7 for Renault Motorsport with, I believe that might have been a slight error. That should be Dan Skinner who lines up alongside him there. And Dan Skinner will, I believe Skinner may have had a retirement. There might have been a glitch with regards to that qualifying order. Let's just reload that grid for you and make sure it's... No, that is how they're going to line up, so that might have to get fixed when our drivers get underway with a rolling start. But it will then be Jordan Pope who lines up on pole for the GT3 class overall, and in the GT3 class ahead of Kevin Smith. They'll line up on what is row at number 5 with Callum Jenkins and Nigel Stock on row at number 6. Behind them, it'll be Stuart Taylor and Stefan Albanese. Albanese, the pole sitter for the GT3 Pro class, with Matthew Addy and Joe McManus behind them on row number 8. Matt Emmons and Sean Cranny-Swash on row 9, with Darren Doherty, our winner in race number 1 for the GT3 Ams, starting P19 alongside Gavin Gardner in P20. Matthew Hodges and Alistair Kurt make up row at number 11, with Carmelo Metella and Tom Edmonds making up the final row of the grid, or the final full row of the grid, I should say, P23 and P24. In fact, that is the final row. 12 rows this time, as all our drivers get ready to go racing once again. But now, as we do wait to go to the green here, we look back to the front of the order, and it is to Robert Destunic to take us away to the green in very short order. And hopefully the blimp has made its way into a better position. Indeed, they're right underneath the blimp right now, which is fantastic to see. And as all of our drivers make their way down, you can see the GT3's backing off to that 5-second margin behind the LMP2s, and it will be to Jordan Pope to get us underway in the GT3 class, with Kevin Smith jumping to the pit lane, as I understand it. But now we do look to the LMP2s as they come through the final corner. They'll let the safety car go, and it'll be to the Dutchman of Robert Destunic from Team Racing Netherlands to get us underway with the race in 60 minutes. Who's going to be the winner in each class come the end of it? Time will tell, and that mandatory pit stop may just throw something into the works. And it's lights out, and away we go for race number 2 in the Apex Race Academy lobby as all of our drivers get underway, and Robert Destunic under a lot of pressure already from Phil McDougall and also Edward Lack, with Lack trying to get all over the back of him here. Phil McDougall on the outside on the right of the picture, Robert Destunic on the inside defending hard. There's quite a few locked up brakes. They come down to the corner, but nobody giving any brake dust off. They all go through 2 by 2, all in formation here. The LMP2 drivers, they all safely navigate the way on through. Chris Daines already up to P5. He's gained quite a bit of ground early. Chris Daines, he battles side by side there with Jamie Dorey as they come through Curva Grande for the first time of asking. They brawl the way up towards the Regia chicane, turns 4 and 5 away, and Chris Daines here goes defensive, also looking for the opportunity up the inside of Delmont as they all concertina the way under braking, but no change between any of the drivers yet as Jamie Dorey gets a little bit of a tank slapper on exit. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, Jordan Pope has successfully held onto the lead. A bit further back there, Nigel Stock, of course, starting far up the order due to that disaster at the end of race at number 1. And meanwhile, we can see a little bit further back, Matt Emmons here battling side by side with the pro driver of what is, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Matthew Hodges, and Emmons just got his nose ahead for the time being. A bit further back, we can see that Alistair Kurt getting on past Joe McManus, as is Carmelo Metella, although Metella's having a bit of an effort here to try and get his way past the AM driver as they make their way down the Circuito straight. You can see everybody now trying to get in the draft, trying to get into the fight, as meanwhile up towards the front of this order, well, we can see Callum Jenkins ahead of Jordan Pope there. Nigel Stock getting past Stuart Taylor, as Taylor has some more connectivity issues, but Callum Jenkins moving into the lead here in the GT3 AM class, and this is an early run from Callum Jenkins. We've seen a lot of pace from the AM driver over the course of the races, less so in qualifying, and now he's got to try and put his foot down here and break away from Pope behind him, the TGC bottom split Heroes driver. But meanwhile, we look to the LMPs, and after one lap, it's Robert Asunik who continues to lead ahead of Phil McDougall, followed by Ed Lack in P3. Then Chris Daines P4 continues to make ground. He's got his way past Adam Delmont. He now looks for his way up towards Ed Lack and trying to get into the top 3. Behind him, Adam Delmont, followed by Jamie Doran. There's a bit of a lock-up there for Phil McDougall into turn 1. Dan Skinner and Gareth Williams, or Gaz Williams in short, complete that order. But meanwhile, Chris Daines here trying to make the move as the 2 CXR Project Black drives end up being stacked over the top of one another. It's very close racing as they make their way from Curva Grande. They're going to go 3 wide, and Chris Daines onto the grass there, trying to snake it up the around the outside. I think that was a little bit of too much of a seized opportunity there, and I think it was the case that in the end, I think Lack and Phil McDougall were always going to make it 2.5 cars wide, but Daines now gets the run out of Rogier. He's up the inside to Lesbo 1, and he's not going to let this go twice, or is he, as he loses the rear end of the car? I don't know if there was contact there, but Chris Daines is off circuit, and Phil McDougall as well. Now that was very close to contention with regards to what exactly happened. We take a look back. Making the way into the corner and under braking here. I think there was a bit of contact. I think Phil McDougall tapped the rear of what was Chris Daines. They both tried to contest the apex. It was very light touch, but in the end, I think the contact between the two of them has seen both of their races turned upside down. But to be fair, both of them with a light amount of damage to the car, we would suspect they'll still be well within this one. Although Chris Daines has now got a lot to do, as you can see in the right and the rear of the picture, and he will now come back furiously. And we do know one thing about Chris Daines is that when it goes wrong, he does not give up. He digs incredibly deep until that car can't go any further anymore. As we see Stuart Taylor holding on to the lead of what is the GT3 AM class. We've had quite a change up here in the GT3 AM class. We've got Stuart Taylor right in the foreground, and what we can see, Callum Jenkins and also Jordan Pope have really fallen back as he Nigel Stock up the inside here for the lead as they come down to Parabolica Curve, and as he makes his way on the inside, we do look a bit further back. It's Matthew Addy, who is battling. He's just going for the cutback here versus what is Stefan Albanese, the pro and the AM battling. They're side by side. And behind them, we see Callum Jenkins coming in. I think Callum Jenkins is coming into the pit, so he's had damage to the car. We have not seen that, but Callum Jenkins has been involved in an incident, and that is why Callum Jenkins has dropped so far down the order. Now, whether that was with another driver or not, we will wait to find out. But meanwhile, looking a lot further back, I can tell you that Darren Doherty right now, well, he's trying to make his way past some of the pros, and also Sean Cranley Swash is a little bit further up. But Darren Doherty, really slow start from the GT3 and winner in race number 1 here. The privates here, I think he's trying to bide his time and use the pros as the pace setters. I think he's going to do a lot of fuel saving in this sequence of the race, because this circuit was for a lot of acceleration zones where you spend most of the race at full throttle. In terms of giving you a bit of a percentage, you spend approximately 70% of your time at Monza, if not more, up to 80% arguably at full throttle. But meanwhile, we just saw in the foreground of the camera there, Alistair Kirk going up the inside of Gavin Gardner for what was P3 in the GT3 PRO class. But meanwhile, as they made their way through the Lesbos, well, it's the two Matthews once again together. Matthew Addy chasing after Matt Emmons, and oh goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you one thing, they've just traded places and they've done so successfully without contact. I think both drivers there would have had a little bit of a slap on the wrist of the team principal. Let's take a look back at how the move was made. Coming through, Rogier, oh my goodness, and Matthew Addy, they're going deep and taking a bit of the sausage curve and almost launching the car into Matt Emmons' path, but kept under control. That's testament to Matthew Addy's ability to keep that Lamborghini calm when it truly matters, and well, that could have gone horrifically wrong for the two of them, but fortunately it did not go the way that the incident could have gone. As we now return to live pictures here, it's only been 5 minutes of racing so far, and we have already seen plenty of battling moments and also a few upsets for drivers, as Alistair Kirk here now tries to find his way past the M driver of Jordan Pope. He's got what is there, Gavin Gardner tucked in behind him and trying to close on through. I can also tell you, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that Chris Daines has already moved up to P7 in the LMP2 Pro class. Dan Skinner's had an off and Daines has gained the place, if you're wondering why they've changed places so quickly. But now it's the case that Alistair Kirk here, well, he's trying to make his way past Pope. He's going to pull Gardner along behind him, and well, I don't think we're going to be seeing Pope battle this one too hard, although Pope's gone very deep on the brakes, and well, Pope's going to fight it. To be fair, the TGC bottom split Heroes driver, well, he wants a little bit of experience, clearly, battling with the pros, but now it's only going to cost him dearly as they make their way out to turn 2 and now through turn for number 3, up through Curva Grande. But as they come through, we look up towards where's our LMP2 drivers, and in particular Adam Delmont here, who's all over the back of Ed Lack. Meanwhile, Rob Dasunik in the lead is just being allowed to run away with things, is Robert, as he makes his way around through Curva Grande, well, not Curva Grande, Curva Parabolica, ahead of the two drivers we're looking at here. And Adam Delman runs a little bit wide there in the dirty air of what is Edlak's machine. And to be fair, that dirty air does compromise the turning radius of the car, or the turning capabilities, we should say. The driver has to brake a bit earlier, approximately 20 metres earlier, to get the same turning capabilities. That's the nasty thing about the dirty air. But as they make their way down to the braking zone for turns 1 and 2, in towards Retfidio, once again they roll. And as they exit here, no change between the two of them. But speaking of no change, I can also tell you that Tom Edmonds, our winner, of course, in the GT3 Pro class in race number 1, there only being 6 GT3 Pro drivers in this race. It is the case that Tom Edmonds right now, he's got a lot to do, and I think much like Darren Doherty, he's taking his time in terms of making his way up the order. And I'm hearing that we've had a disconnection for Sean Cranley Swash, and that is very unfortunate. So the GT3 driver with a retirement, that'd be the equivalent of an engine blown effectively in race conditions, and Kevin Smith in there to take the car to the pits because they could not get the car to start, and that is very unfortunate for Kevin Smith. We've lost 2 GT3 AM drivers, and our field is now down to effectively 22 cars running out on circuit, and there's quite a high rate of attrition here already in this feature. Meanwhile, we look from a bit further down to into the midfield of the GT3s. We see Alistair Kirk here tucked in behind where's Carmelo Metella as they make their way on past what is their Matthew Addy. Meanwhile, Gavin Gardner makes his way past what is Jordan Pope there, and also Joe McManus tucked in behind. I think McManus is going to have a little bit of a run on his teammate as they make their way through what is turn number 3 in short order. They come through Curva Grande here, and as they do, it's the case McManus on the inside, I'll put him on the outside for the purposes of Regia, and as they come up towards the second chicane. Oh, goodness me, there's a car way with there in the foreground. I believe that's Stefan Albanese who's got it mother of all moments wrong. But right now it does look as though McManus has found his way past his teammate. But what on earth there has happened to Albanese? Was he's making his way up towards the braking zone here. We ride on board with Albanese, and under braking, he's going very slowly, and the car just not cooperating. I wonder if he's had some damage to the car. He's parked up, and well, for Albanese, that is a disaster. Same problem for the Italian. And if we look back to live pictures now, well, I can tell you he's still out on circuit, but well, he's going very slowly at the moment. I'm not sure what's happened to Stefan Albanese, other than something perhaps has gone wrong with brake pedal. Perhaps they've had to reset systems. He is now running again, but that was a very odd moment there for Albanese. It's something we do not typically see from the Audi RA in terms of the GT3. It's normally one of the most reliable for our drivers. But as our drivers make their way now down towards Curva Parabolica here, it is a case in the long sequence of GT3s. And to be fair, this was on the forecast in terms of the big slipstream trains. That is Monza for you. It is the case that McManus right now keeping firm versus Pope as they roll through into the end of another lap. As they come on through, we do look to Carmelo Metella here, who is the leader in the GT3 Pro class, as it's all said and done right now. And as they make the way down towards what is Retfidio for another time of asking, Alistair Kirk is now going to contest that by going up the inside here. And well, he will go for the move, and Martello there with a lift off by looks things into the braking zone, giving the TGC Racing driver the lead. But to be fair, it's all about tactics right now. And well, Alistair Kirk, they're taking a bit too much exit curve and a bit of gravel with that rear right tyre, and almost losing it there with some oversteer on power. And he will keep it nice and calm now, as meanwhile Stuart Taylor versus Nigel Stock here. This is the battle for the GT3 AM lead as they battle under braking down in to Virginia as they roll on through. Well, Taylor's not giving this up. He knows that if Nigel Stock takes that lead position, he will be gone in that Mercedes. And right now Taylor using the strong brakes on that Porsche to his advantage as they go side by side here through Lesmo 1. It's a case they've got to give each other space, but they do. Taylor finds himself on the inside, and Stock there with a bit of bravery into Lesmo 2. He completes the move around the outside, and well, you can definitely tell Nigel Stock has decided enough's enough after that disastrous end to race number 1. He's going all in for race number 2, and that was a brave move by Nigel Stock. But I think a move like that is what makes a potential champion. I'm not saying he is going to be our champion come the end of this season. We've got a long way to go, but he is looking very good right now in terms of that boldness and knowing when to make those moves. A nice move by Nigel Stock, and now Matt Evans will need to try and achieve a similar move versus Stuart Taylor to chase after his main championship rival, because keep in mind Matt Evans going into tonight was only 4 points behind Nigel Stock, and he will need to make sure that if he doesn't beat Nigel Stock, he finishes P2 behind him in each and every race, for the simple reason that every point counts. If you can't beat your rival, you have to limit the damage by finishing immediately behind him. And I can confirm, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that Cranley Swash has jumped to the pit. So there seems to have been something wrong with the car. He disappeared for a moment, but he is in the pit lane right now. They're doing repair work. Well, they were doing repair work, I should say, on the Lamborghini, the Verano Motorsport Lamborghini, but they've got the car back out a lap down, and he's currently making his way up to Regia. So a little bit of an oddity, that one, but they seem to have found an issue with the car. They've got it fixed, and they've got it back out there, and we'll have to wait and see if Cranley Swash can get back into the race over the rest of the race distance. It's got a long time to go, given the fact we've only just passed the opening 10 minutes of the 60. We also have the final lap, of course, to add on top of that. Let's have a look from our GT3s. Let's not forget there are LMP2 machines out on the circuit as well. And Adam Delmont here continues to try and put that pressure on Ed Lack. These two have been as they were right now. They've been like this for some time, and really it's been the case that Robert Dasunik, who is 1.7 seconds up the road, now carving his way through the GT3 traffic. Well, I think Dasunik will be worrying about how he gets on through, as we see Lack there really taking a very bare-knuckle approach to sandwiching himself in between Darren Doherty and also what was there, Jordan Pope, and he gets on through in the end. And that's what you sometimes got to do in these LMP2 machines. You've got to go for that space when it's presented and rely on the fact you've got the downforce and the brakes to be able to be bold in passing the GT3s. Of course, not too bold. We've seen what happens when I try to go a little bit too bold in making the passing. Our GT3s are since scattering across the circuit. That happened earlier in the season, of course, when people were finding their feet. But right now things are calming down as we see Matthew Hadley there being passed by Tom Edmonds down into the entry to Ascari. And as they run through, oh my goodness, and that's Tom Edmonds a bit wayward there, coming through the chicane. And the Altitude Esports driver, well, he's going to lose quite a bit of momentum. But fortunately for him, given the fact he's got two LMP2s pegged on the side there, and it is the case that Adam Delmont battling with Ed Lack. He's going to have the inside run down towards Parabolica Curve. And as they made their way through, Adam Delmont there with the momentum. And I think Lack had to back off of the way with Tom Edmonds. As a result, Adam Delmont now up into P2. But how long will this last, given the fact we've got a long run down towards Rettifilio as they go on to what for them is lap number 9. It's going to be a return battle. Ed Lack now on the inside of the camera shot on the left-hand side as they make their way under the camera gantry and down towards the braking zone here. Lack will go as late as he dare on the brakes. Delmont will do the same, and Lack gets the move done. Back for P2. He wants that P2 position. I think the CXR Project Black driver knows that he's got, or he feels he's got the better pace versus Delmont. But again, could Delmont simply be fuel saving right now, nursing the car for later in the race as they continue to grind their way through the GT3 traffic jam here? And you can see Robert Dasunik has really lost out. They've caught up to the leader in class, and Dasunik right now, as he makes his way out of what is Regia, he tries to find his way past what is Stock and also Taylor, and up the inside he goes, and all three, oh goodness me, there's contact between Adam Delmont and also what is there, Stuart Taylor, with Taylor disappearing briefly and Alistair Kirk involved in that contact. Now how much, oh my good lord, and well, it is all kicked off. That is Carmelo Metello into the gravel. Fortunately for him, he's out of the wall, so he will not be caught up in the wall. He will have to do major repair work to the car, but it's gone so wrong for a number of drivers there, all through the tiniest bit of contact. And when we take a look back at exactly what happened with Adam Delmont, rolling his way through the corner here, and we'll ride on board to give you an idea. You're going to see Stuart Taylor on the left there in the Porsche. Now it's going to be the case that under braking, he's gone for it down. He's siphed his way on the inside, seeing the space, and in trying to go for the space there, it has not worked out. And as a result, that's seen him go off the circuit, as has Stuart Taylor. Meanwhile, as we take a look back, we look to Alistair Kirk now, who was involved in all of this. And well, where did Alistair Kirk get caught up as he made his way through? You're going to see he rolls on through here, and it's the tiniest tap as he tries to go through their full pelt. And then, well, we see Carmelo Metello look for the move as he squeezes it free wide there, trying to seize on the opportunity. And I think just a bit of impatience from a number of drivers there has cost them very dearly. Of course, they're racing in the heat at the moment. That's what they'll go for. But particularly for Carmelo Metello, did he need to go for that charge up the inside? I think many of you will say, well, at the time he would have thought about it. Indeed, I agree with that. But I think he will reflect backwards afterwards and think to himself, no, I should not have gone for that. That has just cost me very dearly. Because Alistair Kirk has come into the pits, and I can see out my commentary box window that Carmelo Metello's in as well. Stuart Taylor's also in with the damage, but on top of that, Delmont has stayed out. He's going to fight the car with a quarter of the race complete and try to stay out there until he comes into the pits for his scheduled pit stop. And well, if in doing that, that may save him a lot more time in the long run, as Alistair Kirk has left the pit lane with the repair work to the car, as has Carmelo Metello. They're now both back underway racing. As we look to film at Turgle here, P5 in the LMP2 class, coming all the way down the Circular straight here, chasing after Chris Daines. And as they do, it is the case that right now these three in a little bit of a no man's land in the fact they're all trying to gain onto Gaz Williams. Gaz Williams being the best part of what is 3.3 seconds up the road, and in turn 3.7 seconds off the back of Ed Lack and Robert Sunik. But as they make the way on through, of course, now we do enter that strategic phase, particularly for the LMP2s, where they've got to think about, is this a one-stop race? Is it a two-stop race? Have they got the fuel to be able to comfortably one-stop? Do they need to do heavy fuel saving? And we've seen a number of rounds so far where the majority of drivers have gone for what is the two-stop. Particularly we saw that at Road Atlanta, with so many drivers went for the two-stop, but it was the drivers with the smarts and the nuance who decided, no, if I do a lot of fuel saving, I can make it a one-stop and skip an unnecessary pit stop. Chris Daines being one of those drivers, and we saw it again last time out the Hockenheimring, and we have seen it a number of times. And well, who will be daring to go for the one-stop today, given this circuit is so focused on straight line acceleration and full power for so long? We will wait and see. But speaking of waiting and seeing, we've been waiting to see when this would happen. The two championship rivals in the GT3 AM class are Nigel Stock in the Mercedes and Matt Emmons in the Audi ARA. Well, they are on circuit together. They are battling for the lead of the class, and they are separated by only 4/10 of a second, with Joseph McManus, or Joe McManus in short, of over 6 seconds back in P3 and trying to hold off Matthew Addy. And speaking of that battle, where you can see it here, where McManus is the Porsche in the lead as the TGC bottom split heroes versus Matthew Addy behind for Next Gen Racing with Sam Cases UK and the Lamborghini Caruana Evo. And as they make their way into the braking zone here for Reggio, I should say, it is the case. McManus holding firm, but Matthew Addy staying with him. McManus taking a lot of apex curve there at turn number 5. That's causing the suspension to compress quite heavily. He's going to be able to be careful with that, so he will not want to overextend the bump stop range from that car, otherwise he could see himself bouncing off the road. But meanwhile, as he makes his way up into Lesmo 2 now, it is the case going through turn number 7. McManus doing a good job to hold off the fast charging Matthew Addy here, and definitely for TUC bottom split heroes right now, they'll be egging him on, thinking that he's doing a fantastic job here because he's holding off a very fast driver behind him within class. And as they make their way down towards Ascari, it's looking good for him as he heads on through. But as he rolls it on through the Ascari chicane here, we do look back to the leaders of the class, and that's Nigel Stock in the foreground with Matt Emmons tucked in behind. You can just about make him out in the Audi R8 behind, although he's being shielded by the Mercedes from our camera shot. And as they calm that down in towards Parabolic, of course, the big question for Matt Emmons here will be, does he take the fight to Stock now, or does he play the long game? Because we do know that the Mercedes with that V8 engine can be a little bit thirsty on fuel. To be fair, the Audi can be the same, and every litre they save now, or every half litre they save, could prove vital in the pit stop battle much later on in this race as they come roaring on down in towards Retrovideo once again. But as they do behind them, you can see that's Tom Edmonds, the leader in the GT3 Pro class here. It's the case of leading 1.5 seconds clear. Gavin Gardner in P2 behind him, and well, these two some distance away as Matthew Hodges into the pits, interestingly enough. He's decided to come on in. Now, is this a scheduled stop for the CXR Project Black driver? If so, because we haven't heard of an off-track for Matthew Hodges, but in doing so, that's going to put him quite a way down the order, as we believe that Alistair Kirk is coming on around out to the final corner now. In fact, Hodges is leaving the pit lane. He's just left his pit box, so he's making his way back up to speed. Alistair Kirk has got Callum Jenkins tucked in behind the GT3 AM driver, and as they make their way down the start-finish straight here, well, Alistair Kirk will take P3 in the class for the time being, but it's interesting to see how this is playing out for the simple reason, if that is Matthew Hodges' scheduled stop, he's called it very early. We normally see, if we're going to see an undercut from a GT3 driver, it's normally around the 20-minute mark, sometimes a bit sooner, but he's gone for it. Meanwhile, we look to Ed Lack here, comes past Carmelo Mettello there, and now looks to go hunting after Robert Sunik as they roll the way on through Retrovideo once again. And in terms of relative lap time, that last lap, Lack was 4/10 of a second slower compared to Sunik. He's had some traffic to navigate his way on through, and Sunik's finished the traffic the previous lap, but these two exchanging lap times, and you can imagine it will be building up between the two of them for later on in the race. But right now, Lack is definitely there in the attacking position with 20 minutes of the race complete. 40 still to go, and Lack looking very strong, really coming into its ascendancy now in terms of the hunt. As he rolls on through, it is the case that we see that Nigel Stock into the pit lane as well. He comes on in, and well, now that is a little bit of a surprise here. We've also got Matthew Addy coming into the pit, but Emmons and McManus have stayed out. So it looks like we've got some major undercuts being attempted by our GT3 AM drivers here, much like what Hodges is doing in the GT3 Pro class. Perhaps they know something we don't, but normally for the GT3s it's a one-stop race. Is there a two-stop potential in the cards here, or just the mother of all undercuts? That will be something we wait to find out. But we look to Joseph McManus in the meanwhile, the TGC bottom split heroes driver here, who in P2 right now, I think you'll feel very happy as Darren Doherty out of my commentary box window is also into the pits from P6 in the GT3 AM class. There's a story to tell here, and well, we'll have to wait to see how the pages are filled and how it all plays out in practice. But I do think that Nigel's not going for this very early undercut. It could work out well if Emmons finds himself still having to clear some traffic or having to let some GT3 pros through, because they've got the superior pace by comparison, which of course we'd expect given their pro classification compared to the AM classification of Emmons. But meanwhile, we do look from Manus to Robert Asunik once again here, as he has now opened up the gap to Lack, 2 at 1.1 seconds. Lack having a poor run through the chicane. And the Team Racing Netherlands driver just soldiering on, making his way up towards turns at 4 and 5, and presents us with a great opportunity to have a quick sip of water. Now, I can also tell you that, Adam Delmont is in the pit in P8 right now, and they're doing work on the Excite racing machine. And speaking of his teammate, Dan Skinner, we had that disastrous race one, of course, due to that incident down to turn 1. And right now, the Excite racing driver here currently running P7, and he's yet to pit, so he's running last in the drivers in class have yet to pit. 5.6 seconds down on Phil McDougall in P6, but of course, plenty of distance in this race. We'll wait to see what he can achieve later on as he rolls them through the first 2 legs moments there. But Dan Skinner just pressing on all the same right now, knowing that every point is critical. To be fair, we have seen these feature races, how right towards the end the tyres become very sketchy, and the LMP2 class drivers do start to pivot around the circuit. But speaking of pivoting around the circuit, we've got a battle here between Lack and Dasunik as they come down in towards Parabolica Curve. Dasunik on the inside, and he goes very late on the brakes there, but Dasunik carrying so much momentum in and so much confidence under braking, and well, now they're going to be drag racing, and they're into the pit simultaneously. It's a bow on the brakes. They both lock up as they come into the pit lane. Well, my goodness, and behind them, that is also Chris Daines coming. Well, Chris Daines has gone through. Behind them, that is Jamie Dory and also Gaz Williams. They're all coming in a bit of contact as they both peel into their pit boxes there. And well, it is the case that both drivers are looking to get the best possible run in the pit stop, as we do wait to see how this plays on out as they wait to come out of the pit lane. And well, you can see them both parked up there as Phil McDougall's also in. Chris Daines is the only one of the leading LMP2 Pro Class drivers to stay out on circuit, but now we are waiting for what is effectively that drag race out of the pit lanes. We look to Adam Delmont briefly here as he makes his way down towards Sarah Clear. We're waiting for those LMP2 pit stops to conclude, and well, they have concluded, and it is Lack who's come out ahead of what is their Robert Dasunik. So Lack was doing some fuel saving behind Dasunik, we do believe, and look at this. I mean, there is Lack, there is Dasunik, and behind them that is Gaz Williams, who has closed up so much in the pit stops. It's the case. There's been a lot of fuel saving going on, particularly for Gaz Williams and also for Lack, and that is how things are switched up here, with only 24 minutes of the race complete by the time they get onto what is Regina chicane. But right now, behind them, we do have what is Jamie Dory as well. Jamie Dory, the best part of 5.2 seconds back, and Phil McDougall a further 5 seconds off of Dory. But oh my goodness, now Lack will find himself in that tricky position, which is, can he break the gap open to Dasunik, or will Dasunik reel it on him? Now, you would imagine that Lack has to worry about the fact that he is the lead driver, and into the pits out my commentary box window comes Chris Daines. And remember that Daines has had to recover his way after that incident earlier on. He's had to recover his way all the way up into the fight, and he was closing on the top 5. So I do think that right now Chris Daines could be having a stop that puts him right back up into the mix for this. We will wait and see. But Lack, as he comes roaring on down in towards Ascari with Robert Dasunik behind him, and then we do have Gaz Williams there. They are all close together now, 4 seconds separating these 3 drivers, and you can imagine that Jamie Dory and Phil McDougall will not be too far behind. And Chris Daines, where will he fit into the jigsaw puzzle here as they make their way down towards Parabolica Curve? We will wait to see. You can see Dory there having to clear what's Cranley Swash, who's still running on circuit, trying to get himself back onto the lead lap of the GT3 AM drivers. But as they all make their way through Parabolica Curve, the leaders in the LMP2 Pro class, what's happening with Chris Daines? I hear you ask. He's in service, he's leaving the pit lane now. Well, here comes Lack, so Ed Lack will retake the lead. Then we do have Robert Dasunik coming on through, and then we've got Gaz Williams. What about Chris Daines? Well, Daines is now getting up to speed as he exits out the pit lane here. He stays towards the right of the white line, and in the end, look at how much Chris Daines has gained by simply putting in the laps and then coming in a little bit after. It's the case. He's now the best part of 1.1 seconds off of P3. There's no stopping Verano Motorsports Chris Daines. He is absolutely flying. And well, to give you an idea, who currently holds the fastest lap in the LMP2 Pro class. It's 35.1, and that is in Chris Daines' hands, and that was only set 3 laps ago. The man is on a mission to recover this and make it 2 wins out of 2, and he will not stop. You can be sure of that now. We've got just over half the race to go, and that pit stop, that overcut pit stop, has worked out wonders for the Dane as he hunts down what is Gaz Williams next, his main rival in the championship. As we see Darren Doherty there having to stay aside as they make their way through at Lesmo 2, and as they do, we do have coming out of the pits, we have Jordan Pope here. In fact, he's missed his pit boxes, Jordan Pope. He went out of it and went back into it, and that will hurt him massively as Matt Evans and Gavin Gardner into the pit, and this is the battle for what is the GT3 AM class lead. Now here is Nigel Stock making his way on around, and as he comes on out of the final corner here, Nigel Stock's got a long way to go. What about Matt Evans? Has Evan left the pit lane yet? He has left the pit lane. In ahead of him, that is Gavin Gardner. Now where is Nigel Stock in all of this? There's Nigel Stock now. This is going to be really close in the run down towards turns 1 and 2. They come onto the camera. Look at Matt Evans on the inside there, on the left hand side of the camera shot, and Nigel Stock under braking. They're going to battle under braking into Retavilio. They give one another just enough space. Nigel Stock on the inside through 2. Meanwhile, Matt Evans stays there, but in the end, Stock able to deploy the power of that V8 of the Mercedes just a little bit more figuratively compared to Matt Evans. In the end, Stock has just done enough to retain the lead of the GT3 AM class, literally by a hair's whip. If it had gone any other way, we would see Matt Evans leading it right now, and Evans will know that going for the overcut has not worked, as he has to deal with the fact he's got Matthew Hodges between himself now and his main rival, and he will want Hodges to get out of the way as soon as possible. Hodges, to be fair, has no responsibility to do so. He's a GT3 Pro driver on the lead lap with them, and it is the case that he will be in his own race trying to hunt down Gavin Gardner, who's only 2.7 seconds up the road, and Gardner was the one who gained out of this massively by jumping up into P3 ahead of Hodges. So it has really played out right now as they make the way down the Circular Straight and up towards Ascari, but my goodness, I think Nigel Stock would have had his heart in his mouth there. Indeed, Crest Autosport of Apex Tracks would have all had their hearts in their mouths down in the garage with the fact that Nigel Stock has just pulled off the undercut and committed a robbery versus Matt Evans, and the fact he's just held on to a lead, but for how long before Evans comes on back? That will be the question, and you know that Evans will not give this up until the checkered flag, as we see there Blackett in the YouTube chat saying let's go Verano, and indeed right now I can tell you that for Gavin Gardner, as he makes his way, and he's the focus of our cameraman's attention, as he makes his way out of Parabolica Curve, will now be trying to hunt down Alistair Kirk, who is only 2 seconds up the road, as Tom Edmonds is leaving the pit lane here, and as he comes on out the race leading the GT3 Pro class. Well, here's Alistair Kirk coming on down, and it's Kirk on the right-hand side of your picture, and Alistair Kirk is going to get ahead of Edmonds as they make their way down to the braking zone, and, well, Edmonds has lost out here, but we do have to keep in mind that Alistair Kirk took a very early pit stop due to the damage on his car, and does that mean he's got to pit again? That will be the question that we have to answer in the back of our minds, but Gavin Gardner here must be looking at the top 2, only 1.7 seconds ahead of him, and thinking, could I potentially sneak the win off of them at this rate? We'll have to wait and see, as we see Phil McDougall outside of my commentary box window is into the pit from P6 in the LMP2 Pro class, and as all we're trying to come down right now, we're only almost at the halfway point of the race. Would you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? It feels as though this race has gone for a lot longer given the amount of action and the trading we've seen through the pit stops, but it is the case right now. We've still got a lot of distance and time to go, and plenty more battles on the horizon, there's no doubt about that, as Gavin Gardner here lets on past Robert Sunik, who is P2 in the LMP2 Pro class. And, well, Robert Sunik here, he's lost out to Ed Lack in the pit stops, but now, of course, he's got the opportunity to chase Lack back. And on that last lap, Robert Sunik was 0.3 of a second faster. He's already getting that gap down. Is the Dutchman versus the Briton as they make their way into Ascari here, navigating their way through the GT3 traffic, and that traffic falling at the worst possible time for the Sunik here, as he's tucked in so close behind Alistair Kirk, but in the end he manages to find his way on through. To be fair, Lack had a similar situation, so it's not as though either driver has gained from this. They've both been penalised, and you can see there, looking a bit further back, Chris Daines also trying to navigate his way on through. Oh, goodness me! And it was very close there between Sunik and what was Stuart Taylor, but in the end Stuart Taylor just wide enough to give Sunik the space. Now Chris Daines will look to try and come on through as well as they make their way down the start finish straight. Him, Chris Daines, of course, he's found his way past Gaz Williams, and he's now going hunting once again. And in fact, where did that pass happen, I hear you ask, versus Gaz Williams? Well, here was the pass only moments ago. where he was in the run, coming through Curva Grande and up towards what was the Regia chicane, up the inside for Chris Daines. Williams actually went a bit overly deep, then had to back out of it, and Chris Daines just simply given the space to operate and make the move. And I think Williams hoping to close up later in the race. And again, we will have to wait and see how these strategies play on out with regards to who's one stopping, who's two stopping, and who's got the fuel to go to the end comfortably versus who's got to do a lot of fuel saving to get to the end. And that is why I wouldn't count things out yet. Daines may be going very fast right now, but does he have another pit stop on the cards? Is it the case that anybody in the LMP2 class has another pit stop on the cards? We can't tell, because we can only predict, but I'd say some may do given the early nature of their opening pit stop, but that will be revealed in time. As we're hearing that Cranley swashes into the pits for his scheduled stop after that disastrous moment early on where they had to bring the car in to repair an issue, but Cranley swashed in for his scheduled stop at the 31-minute mark. And meanwhile, we look for our LMP2 drivers to our GT3 pros here, as we can see that Tom Edmonds, since Alistair Kirk got ahead of him in the jump through the pit stops, it is the case that Edmonds is closing and backing up now as we ride on board with the GT3 Pro driver. Now, as he makes his way on through, giving that hot pursuit here of Alistair Kirk. In this case, Alistair Kirk has got his teammate Stuart Taylor in front of him, who is technically a lap down at this point, so he will be required to move out of the way or not put up a fight according to the blue flags. They don't have to move immediately out of the way, it should be pointed out. Our drivers who are blue flags, it is the case that they're expected not to fight drivers on the lead lap, but they must essentially not battle but drive safely and give the lead lap drivers the opportunity to pass. And we can see here that Tom Edmonds, as they make the way down the start finish straight here, using the draft off the back of Taylor, and he is closing as we hear the whine there of the Porsche's engine as they make the way down towards turn 1 into the heavy braking zone here from the highest possible speeds. And as they come into that braking zone, you can see Edmonds really closing up on the brake. He's got that mastery of the brakes and just rotating the car on the nose as they make the way out of Wes Rettivilio, and now it's the long run up towards Regia. And as we ride on board here with Tom Edmonds, he may be looking for the move. Alistair Kirk's already peeled out to the outside. That will put him on the defensive line down in towards Regia's chicane. Or is this the case that Alistair Kirk's going to back off? In fact, Alistair Kirk has backed off already and tucked back in. I think this is smart racing from Alistair Kirk. I think he thinks whilst he pitted very early, he can make it to the end of the race if he fuel saves behind Edmonds and then goes on the offensive right at the end. So keep an eye on the TDC racing driver Alistair Kirk here. Very smart in the GT3 machines, of course. That's why he switched to the GT3s. He feels a lot more comfortable in the GT3s and has been on a roll in them in recent times, particularly in the iRacing official series. And we saw that on his debut in the GT3 class last time out at the Hockenheimring, and now he's doing it again here today. As we say hello to Stefano there in the YouTube chat, and whilst unfortunately I believe that may be Italian there, unfortunately my Italian's not too good, although I did study Latin at school, but the two do not quite translate across one another. I do hope you're doing well, Stefano, and enjoying the show tonight as we see our drivers making their way down towards turn number 11, and it is the case that Alistair Kirk right now really in that slipstream pool versus what is Tom Edmonds. But the battles themselves a little bit quiet now as Gaz Williams into the pits again. Now, I think this is a sign that we have two stops on the horizon here, because Gaz Williams has not been in for an unscheduled stop in terms of damage to the car, and I do not see on my data screen anything along the lines of what is an off-track or anything for Gaz Williams, but he's done his pit stop here. I wonder, well, unless that's a track limits situation where he's had to come on in and take a stop and go, but to be fair, I think it's just a little bit of fuel going in the car, because he's had what is 20 instant points so far, so he's close to a drive-through, but that was not a drive-through, I can assure you of that. He makes his way back up to speed. Wait to see, he's come back out in P5, he's come right back out in the lead GT3 traffic. You can see that's Nigel Stock in front of him, and that's going to hurt him quite hard, Williams, in terms of getting back up to speed, as he's also got to get past Hodges and Gardner in short order. But as he rolls on through here, it is the case that Gaz and Williams has got a lot still to do. As they make their way underneath the gantry in short order, you can see just behind them, that's Dan Skinner. Dan Skinner, the Excite Racing driver here, also trying to close on up, and he will see that Gaz Williams has come on in and think this is an opportunity to potentially go on the offensive as they roll their way through Lesmo once again, and well, Hodges there giving Skinner just enough space to creep up the inside and get the move done, trading the place. And as they roll on through, we do look back to where's the battle for the lead of the GT3 AM class, and we can see that Nigel Stock now, as we ride on board the gearbox of the Mercedes AMG, being pursued by Matt Emmons and the Audi ARA LMS. Both of these German machines, of course, two British drivers as well, as they make their way down towards Ascari, and Nigel Stock holding that lead position. But Emmons is inching closer each and every lap, and well, that last lap Emmons was slower, but to be fair, they both pulled traffic on this lap, and the traffic has fallen more favourably for Emmons, and that is how he's closed up and as they make their way down towards parabolic curve here, it is the case that Nigel Stock Phil comes, we will have the grunt versus the Audi, but if he even makes one small mistake for a corner, that Audi will be right there with him coming out of the corner and be in the toe and looking at that potential move. As they make the way to the end of their current lap, they come to the end of lap number 19, they go on to their 20th tour of the circuit under race conditions, and as they do, I can tell you that Alistair Kirk and Tom Edmonds have traded places for the lead of what is the GT3 PRO class. As you do look to them briefly, and we can see that Alistair Kirk has got himself ahead. Meanwhile, Gavin Gardner coming through now, Matthew Hodges in the GT3 PRO and P4, and then we look to Nigel Stock here holding off at Matt Evans, but Evans closing as they emerge from Retrovilio, and it is the case as they come charging through Curva Grande. I think a move might be on the horizon soon, because you can see Evans just literally there and slithering all over the back now of Nigel Stock. He's well within attack range, less than 2 tenths a second, 1.5 tenths as they come towards Regia, and he's going to look for the move here, Edmonds, or is he? No, he waits for it there, just trying to get into the mind of Nigel Stock. He'll know that Stock made the mistake at the Regia chicane in the sprint after being under a little bit of pressure. He's trying to do that again. He's trying to get Stock to make an error there, an unforced mistake which will make the pass easier, but no such thing for Nigel Stock. He'll know this time that mistake will be too costly, and he won't want to make it twice on repeat as they make the way out of the Lesmos and now down Serraglio once again. But as we ride on board with Matt Evans here, closing up as they roar their way down the Serraglio straight. It's the case that Evans, of course, has got to be careful. That Audi can be very, very sensitive to curbs, and also as the tyres start to wear down, that rear can become very loose in the curve, give it great rotation, but particularly through turn 9, as he's just gone through the right-hand portion of Ascari. You don't want over-rotation in the car, otherwise that can cause the rear end to come around uncontrollably, and we did see that in the early stage of the season, particularly on the North American continent, where Evans seemed to have trouble with getting the rear of the car to settle late in the feature race, but right now he's managing it well as they make the way through Parabolic, and both drivers here, of course, right on the limit, and they're both learners, of course, in terms of being in that AM class, plenty to learn, but both right now racing a bit of a league of their own, with P3 man Matthew Addy 7.5 seconds back as Edmonds and Kirk trade places a bit further up the road, swapping places to do fuel saving off of one another in the slipstream stakes. But now here it comes, the potential move here, with Evans going to the outside. He's going to try and pin Stock to the inside here, down into Retrovilio as they made their way past Taylor, and as they made their way, end up braking here, Evans tries to just stay alongside. Stock gives him the space on the exit too, but it's not enough once again. And Evans, to be fair, I think at one moment wants to get fully along, and then the other moment he can't quite get along, and that is the difficulty there. As we're having confirmation in the Facebook chat there from Martin Brinkworth that we have had the retirements of Phil McDougall and Adam Delmont in the LMP2 classes, which is unfortunate, and it is the case that McDougall and Delmont will be looking forward to seeing them return to the circuit in a week's time, but it has not been their day in the feature. Technical issues on both cars as we're to understand it. The Excite Racing machine, the 6R Project Black machine, will not be back out on the Italian asphalt for the rest of this race, with just over 20 minutes remaining as we start to now move towards the final third. As they roar through, I have to pan the camera around for every moment, ladies and gentlemen, because it is the case that we have Jamie Dory here coming into the pits for his second scheduled stop. I think we're going to be seeing a second stop from a good number of LMP2 drivers, and how will this shake things up? That will be the big question that's on everybody's mind, but also in terms of other questions that are on minds. Well, is Alistair Kirk right now trying to just hang on to the back of Tom Edmonds to the very end to bring home a chance at the win, or at least a PE2, or does Alistair Kirk have to pit again? That is a question which we need to know the answer to. Unfortunately, we can't look into a crystal ball, fast forward the race. We can only find out as the race bears down here, with 21 minutes remaining, as Edmonds is the leader right now, but Alistair Kirk with that straight line speed in the BMW M4, very fast on the straights as the M4, much like the Mercedes. Not quite there with the Mercedes, but it comes close as they make their way down in towards the braking zone for Retrovilio once again. Alistair Kirk staying in the slipstream tracks this time, but meanwhile a bit further back we can see Nigel Stock holding on here with Evans close once again. Stock going to the middle of the road, Evans having to go to the outside. They battle under braking, Evans trying to outbrake Stock to get fully alongside into two. He can't quite find it. Nigel Stock leaves a little bit of the door open, but Evans this time takes a different approach. He tucks in behind and looks to get the draft up towards Regia, all the way from corner exit of Retrovilio, and this could give Evans a bit more of an opportunity to have a bit more momentum in the run here. But of course Nigel Stock will be wary of it, and he will see the move coming from a bit further back if it is going to happen. as they make their way down into the braking zone. There has been a bit of a change up front, I can tell you, with regards to the LMP2 Pro class. We'll come back to in a short second, but Nigel Stock right now getting a bad run out of Regia, and as they make their way into Lesbo 1, Matt Emmons looks the outside. He's a bit far back though. He's just trying to get into the head of Nigel Stock. Here it's Matt Emmons to try and force Stock into a mistake. Stock is feeling the pinch of pressure, and as they make their way out of Lesbo 2, Emmons runs a little bit wide, takes a bit of gravel with him. That will cost him a bit of the run down towards Ascari. Meanwhile, I can tell you in the LMP2 Pro class, Ed Lack is leading by 2.8 seconds over Chris Daines. Chris Daines has got past Robert Dasunik. How's that happened, I hear you ask? Well, let's take a look back and find out exactly what has happened. So this was only moments ago as they were making their way towards the end of the previous lap, and you can see there Robert Dasunik on the inside, Chris Daines on the outside, navigating the GT3 traffic, and then in the end Chris Daines had to back off there due to the fact they did have one of the GT3 machines in the way. Oh my goodness! And well, it was the case that Robert Dasunik having a bit of ping pong there with Joe McManus, I believe that was, unless I'm very much mistaken, and in the end ping pong into Chris Daines having a little bit of a attack, and as they made their way down the start finish straight here, well, Robert Dasunik was not going to let this go. He looked up the inside, and credit to the Dutchman for coming on back here. They made the way through it. Daines simply let Dasunik overcook it into the corner, and the battle continued even more, coming out towards turn 2 in the run up to Regia. Surely this is. I think we've got enough replay reel here because they made their way then through Curva Grande. Well, Chris Daines was in the ultimate run. Well, he's peeled out nice and early to the inside for the purposes of the entry to Regia, and as they made their way under braking, that was how Chris Daines finally got the move all said and done. But what a sequence then. That could have gone horrifically wrong for the pair of them. They're both of them running on the limit, and well, it is the case of Robert Dasunik now down to P3, but staying with Chris Daines, and they are 2.5 seconds away from Ed Lack, who's up the road. But whilst we were watching that, I can tell you that Matt Emmons is now ahead of Nigel Stock in the battle for the GT3 AM lead, and how has that happened? We take a look back. Now, this was only moments ago as they made their way up towards Regia, and it looks like Nigel Stock defended to the inside. Emmons on the outside there, and Emmons out braking Stock, under braking into Regia and getting the move done. A smart move there by Emmons, a brave move as well. He's now up into the lead. As they make their way on down towards Ascari. We are hearing there in the YouTube chat from CXR Racing, and I believe that is Phil McDougall at the helm of the keyboard, letting us know that it is the case that due to his virtual reality headset breaking, he has had to retire from the race, which is very unfortunate, Phil, if that is you. I'm sorry to hear that, but we do hope you're able to get it fixed for the purposes of next week at Spa, because we'd love to see the CXR Project Black team out in full force in that very distinctive green and black livery. But meanwhile, all hopes in the LMP2 Pro class now are on your teammate of Edward Lack here, or Ed Lack in short, as he makes his way through Parabolica Curve once again. It is the case that he has got a 2-second advantage to Chris Daines, but Daines is inching closer as they make their way down the start finish straight. You can see Daines there coming swooping out behind Matt Emmons. Robert Dasunik doing the same. They both know they could potentially win this. They're almost within slipstream range. Around that 2-second mark is when they feel it. And as they come on through here, it will not be helped for Ed Lack, and the fact that he's had Matthew Hodges to follow his teammate through what is the chicane there of Retvilio, and as they make their way now up towards Curva Grande, that will really bite into the time as they make their way up towards Regia. Meanwhile, we look from them to what is Tom Edmonds, meanwhile, who still holds off Alistair Kirk, but Alistair Kirk is right there with him and is not letting it go any time soon. I can tell you one driver who has been let go rather soon, and that is Jordan Pope, who has been passed by this man, Darren Doherty. The Irishman found his way on through Jordan Pope, and let's take a look at exactly how that move was made for P5 in the GT3 AM class. Well, it was not a move out on circuit per se, it was a move made for a mistake, and that was Pope going a bit deep into what was the opening chicane, and Darren Doherty simply saying, thank you very much, I'll take that and may be on my merry way. So I feel over the move on circuit, but not to be the case. But meanwhile, I can tell you, whilst that we were taking a look back at that, it is the case that we've got Dan Skinner trying to put some pressure on Jamie Dory, albeit he's actually dropped a bit off the back of Jamie Dory. He's had a bit of an off as Dan Skinner recently, and that would explain why he's fallen a bit back off the back of the LMP2 driver. But meanwhile, we're hearing that Robert Dasunik has fallen a bit back of Chris Daines due to the way the traffic has fallen, the GT3 traffic. And well, to give you an idea, here is Robert Dasunik, who is now 2.2 seconds off of what is Chris Daines there in P2, as all of the top three of the LMP2 Pro class all go for the camera shot here and make their way down towards turns 1 and 2 once again. But as they come roaring them down, you can see in the rear of the picture there as they make their way down. That is Matt Emmons holding off Nigel Stock as they make their way all that to the braking zone for Redfieldio, and as they come on in to the corner sequence here, it is the case that Emmons under that pressure from stock as they roll their way on through. And as they come through, Redfieldio the chicane, alternatively Prima Variante, as it's also known, and they make their way up towards Regia or Secondo Variante as they come all the way through. It is the case that Emmons right now knows he's got to make the break, and he's got the fortune of having Carmelo Mettello put in stock under a bit of pressure. And Carmelo Mettello, the GT3 Pro driver, has found his way through. And as they come down into the braking zone here for what is the Regia chicane, you can see that Martello is putting away from stock. He's inching closer to Emmons, but oh goodness me, and Nigel Stock there with a mistake at the chicane that keeps haunting him. It is the case, he's lost a bit of momentum. He didn't put it in the wall or do any damage to the car, but that I think will say to him, perhaps I need to back it off a little bit, perhaps I'm pushing a bit too hard and I need to think about whether I want to chase that win down as aggressively now. But Nigel Stock, they're close to curtains, and that may just change his perspective on the remainder of this race. We will have to wait and see, but you can see the gap that's opened up between himself and Emmons is almost now 4 seconds, and that's just through one tiny little error that saw him trigger some oversteer on the exit of the Regia chicane. As he makes his way through Ascari and heads all the way down now towards what is Parabolica Curve. It is the case the Englishman here looking to try and find his way back versus the Briton in front of him, but he's got a long to order to do so, given the fact he will not have the toe of a driver in front of him. He'll have to do it under his own grunt in that V8 engine, and well, he will have the pace to do it eventually, but how soon can he close up? There's less than 15 minutes to go. In this case, 14.5 minutes remaining, and we will wait and find out as they make the way down what is the start-finish straight here. Meanwhile, Matt Emmons, well, I think he will be thinking out, do I let Martello go? Given the fact the pro driver here will pass the M, they're battling just a track position, not for points. And yes, Emmons is smart here. Now, this is exactly what he needs to do. Let Martello go. Given that Stock made that error, he will lose about 3 to 4 tenths of a second, but he can now follow Martello in the draft, save a bit of fuel, get the pull along the straight, and this is what Emmons needs now, because the Mercedes and Stock will gradually close up when Emmons is in clear air, when he hasn't got the toe. But for every second, every corner he can capitalise on this will be critical now if he wants to hold on to that lead to the finish and have less pressure on him. And Emmons here, I think, has played this one right as they make the way through. And we say hello in the Twitch chat there to UKSR's Chris Eddy there. That's UK Sim Racing, Chris Eddy, a major iRacing sim community. If you didn't know about it, one to also check out alongside NXTGEN Racing. But I hope you're doing it well, Eddy, and well, it looks like you're enjoying the racing. Good stuff indeed. And as our drivers continue to make their way on around right now, it is the case that we do see Tom Edmonds here rolling on through. He still does have Alistair Kirk pinched up behind him, but the question will be, of course, is when will Alistair Kirk dare to look at a potential move coming back? And I do think that for the purposes of Alistair Kirk, it's one of those right now. Again, I can't tell you. I don't think anybody can tell you unless somebody's down there in the pit lane right now in the garage of TGC Racing and wants to spill the secrets. But I wonder about whether Alistair Kirk has got enough fuel to get to the end, because he's been tucked in behind Edmonds for some time. They did trade places earlier on in what was the final half an hour of this race. They were trading it back and forth on the start-finish straight here, but ever since around the final 25 minutes began, we've seen Kirk take that second place and stay in it. And I think now Kirk may be on the bubble with regards to the fuel remaining in the car, and that may be preying on his mind here. We will wait and find out. But meanwhile, as he stays in sequence for the time being, we do look back to what is our leaders in the LMP2 class, and we can see here Ed Lack being chased by Chris Daines. Daines has closed up, and we thought this battle was coming. We knew that Chris Daines would close up at some point, given the pace he's showing. We ride on board now with the Ferrano Motorsport driver here, and he will be looking for this move. He'll want to get it done sooner than later. He already looks for it. My goodness, he's looking for it there, and he tucks back in immediately. Well, Chris Daines is pulling out every fang, every tooth and nail, because he comes through for Ascari here. I think Lack was thinking to himself, surely he's not going to do it from that far back at such speed. Well, I think Daines was thinking about it for one moment there, trying to feint it, and as they make the way down towards Parabolica, they got the traffic there of Stefan Albanese, and that's not where you want to catch a GT3. Although Albanese, to be fair, gives as much width as he dare within track limits, and Daines right now and also Lack are unhindered for the time being, but it's Daines who will now have the slipstream here, and these LMP2 machines gain so much in the toe, and you can see already, look at the speed that Daines is gaining by comparison with Lack. Lack goes defensive to the inside in, oh goodness, and Daines does the switch back, but Lack knows it's coming, he doesn't move to the inside, or the outside we should really say, and as they make their way through the corner, well, Lack has seen it all before, and I can tell you now, having seen Ed Lack race in the GT3 Championship was hosted by NXTGEN, if you're looking for a driver who's seen every attempt at a feint, the CXR Project Black driver will know when one's coming, and he called it there, and Daines almost got it wrong, but as they come down towards Regia, Daines looks again, he swings to the outside, trying to get Lack to suddenly move out of line to go off the race line to make a mistake, but Lack, a seasoned veteran, knows it's coming, and the two of them here, this is going to be brilliant to the end, I'm sure, as they roll them through the first Lesmo here, and Lack is not giving in by any means as they come rolling through Lesmo 2. Now, of course, how long can they keep this up? That will be the big question as they both gain a bit of a draft out of Sean Cranley, Swash the Verona Motorsport GT3 AM driver, but they will not be hindered by him at all because they're coming down so clear. They've got a long run here as we're hearing that Callum Jenkins has had a moment. That's elsewhere on circuit. We'll come back to that shortly. But meanwhile, Ed Lack holding on as we see there. Just a little bit of understeer from Ed Lack versus Daines on the apex of 8. And as they roll through, it's the case. Well, Daines is literally like a devil possessed. I mean, the man is tucked in so tight to the back of Lack in the ring roads there. And as they make their way down to the braking zone to Parabolica, he looks through it again. He does a feint to the inside, and Lack right now must be thinking he knows the move's coming, but he's not going to fall for it as they come out to Parabolica and head down towards another lap. They are on to what is now lap number 32. There are 9 minutes to go plus the final lap. Can Lack hold on? Daines again pins Lack to the inside. He literally holds him there to the inside and swings out to the outside, down into Retfido. Under braking they go. Lack goes a bit deep on the brakes by comparison with Daines. Daines looks at the cutback, but Lack covers it off here. They are as they were as they emerge from the corner once again. Now they come roaring up towards Curva Grande, and as they make the way on through, it is the case. They stay as they were for the time being, but they make the way on through. And what will Daines do this time? He's very close. He's within the 10th of a second already. They've got a long run here. 300 metres and closing. It's going to be Lack defence the inside. Daines on the outside here. Daines backs off a little bit early, trying to get Lack once again to overextend into the corner, to go deep to get the cutback. Lack does not fall for it. Instead, they go into 2 Lesmos. But meanwhile, as they make the way on through, we do say hello in the Facebook chat there to Mark Fletcher, saying, come on, Tom, keep going. That's in reference to Tom Edmonds, who's still leading the GT3 Pro class, I can tell you, by a margin of 4 tenths over Alistair Kirk. And Tom Edmonds has just set the fastest lap of the race for the GT3 Pros of a 47.3. We will keep our eyes on that off screen, but meanwhile we focus here on the battle for the overall in the LMP2 Pro Class lead. We're now 8 minutes to go. They come up behind, where's Jordan Pope there? A little bit more traffic in front as Jordan Pope decides to take a rally cross line for Ascari. Will that be okay? It is okay. They both just managed to avoid Jordan Pope. It is the case. It's worked out nice. I think Pope did that intentionally to make sure he wasn't in the way of this battle. He wouldn't want to be between either of them, I can tell you that. Otherwise he'd have both teams rushing down towards the TGC bottom split heroes paddock, screaming his name. And as they make the way around through Parabolica again, my goodness, how long can they keep this up? And to be fair, Daines has actually backed off a little bit now. And I do wonder whether Daines, perhaps by doing those very sudden jolts on the tyre, perhaps he just put a bit too much heat in the tyre. Perhaps he's thinking, what about if I lower Ed Lack into a sense of security? And as they make the way down towards turn number 1, once again, under braking. Now this is where the problems begin. That's Darren Doherty, who is one of our GT3 AM drivers in P5 in the GT3 AM class. They both get caught behind Doherty, but to be fair, Lack actually backed it off very well there through turn 1 to give Doherty the space to exit the Rettifilio chicane. But now Lack's going to be in the drag race up towards Regia, and as they make the way in towards the braking zone, it's Lack on the inside, Chris Daines on the outside. They go under braking. Lack once again covers him off here. There's plenty of overtaking opportunities at Monza, and Lack knows every which one at the moment. He's blocking off moves left, right and centre, but surely as the time burns on, keep in mind of course that these guys have yet to do a second stop if they're planning to do one, although I doubt it given how deep they've gone. But Lack makes a small mistake. He takes a bit of gravel on the exit of Lesmo 2. Could this be the sign of an opening? Could it be a sign of a chink in his armour as they make the way down towards Ascari? And as they come rolling on down, Chris Daines once again takes that little preemptive sweep to the inside, but no move comes. He's too far back, but Daines definitely teasing that move. He's teeing it up every time as they make the way on down, trying to continue to get in the head. And as they roll down towards Parabolica Curve, it is the case that right now Daines holding Lack to that outside line here, both on the racing line. We ride on board once again here with Chris Daines rolling on through. And as they get that exit here, we'll see if there's any sign of a short shift here from Daines. No, he's taking it all the way out to the red limiter. It is the case. It is a race to the death now as they make the way down towards turn number 1. And with 6 minutes to go, you can see Daines inching ever closer here as he closes in. In fact, a bit of a lift there from Daines, interesting enough. And he looks there, but they've got the GT3 driver there of what is Joseph McManus in the way, and this is really rough here for both drivers, particularly for Lack, who's compromised on exit, and now Daines just needs to find some space on circuit to look for the move here. He's going to have a great run, and he's looking to the inside into Curva Grande. Lack defends towards the outside to inside run up towards Regia, but I think this is what Daines was waiting for. The traffic has finally come. They make the way down to the braking zone here for Regia. Lack on the inside, Daines on the outside, and Lack's got his nose in there side by side through the corner, and in the end they give each other space. They're still drag racing up towards Lesmo 1, but surely Daines with the inside line under braking will have this nailed and shut as they make the way through Lesmo 1 up towards Lesmo 2, and in the end it took a bit of GT3 traffic and some smart play from Chris Daines to find the lead. Now can Ed Lack come back? He's got 5 minutes to go and he will not let it go, but the great respectful racing from both. Indeed, CXR Racing, you hit the nail on the head there in the YouTube chat. Great respect from both drivers, and as they roll them through, well, we'll have to wait and see, because as they make the way through Ascari, Lack is right there, and they've got plenty of GT3 traffic ahead of them. There's a whole host of GT3s. They're spaced out quite well, but it is the case that they're going to have to try and find a way to navigate them, and now Daines will have the pressure of not being caught behind, not being caught behind a GT3 for a tight section, particularly a chicane. As they make the way through, we must now look to Tom Edmonds here, who holds on to the lead of the GT3 Pro class. He has got an advantage of 2.5 tenths versus what is Alistair Kurt behind. And as they roll them through here, through Regia once again, we're now 4 minutes to go. And indeed, Altitude Esports here getting very excited because their driver took the win, of course, in race number 1. They want him to make it a double here, which would be sensational in the Porsche 911, no less. And as they make their way up into Lesbo 2 here, it does look as though Alistair Kirk is threatening, but he hasn't quite got the fangs to go with the rather threatening position behind. I think Alistair Kirk may be falling off a little bit this time. Perhaps he's backing off to look for one last gasp onto the final lap here. But it's great racing from both of them. To be fair, Alistair Kirk to have pitted so early at the 17-minute mark with the damage to the car, and to have gone this long, that is testament to his fuel saving and the racecraft. And Tom Edmonds right now, I think he's wary of that, and he's just starting to open that envelope a little bit more. Meanwhile, I can tell you in the GT3 AM class that Matt Edmonds is leading the class by 5.6 seconds ahead of Nigel Stock. But meanwhile, we must come back to our LMP2 Pro drivers, and you can see here that since the move, Lack has fallen back off of Daines. But to be fair, Daines has got some heavy traffic coming through Ascari. That is the GT3 AM leader of Matt Edmonds. We've got a car off the circuit. That's Jordan Pope, I think, pointing the wrong way on the Ascari chicane. In fact, no, my apologies. Jordan Pope has had a moment, but that wasn't him. That was the fender bender of what was one of the pickup trucks there, parked off circuit, one of the Marshall's trucks. And meanwhile, we can see that Chris Daines, as he makes his way round through Parabolica Curve, not long to go, but in holding on, it is one of those situations whereby Daines now, I think, is trying to bring this one to the finish. Meanwhile, Jamie Dory has found his way past Dan Skinner for P5 in the LMP2 Pro class. How has this happened? Well, it's back and forth between the two of them, and let's see the full story. Well, it was, in fact, Dan Skinner who had the initial run Jamie Dory down into Retfilio here, and he went up the inside, and Dory, I think, well, he decided to simply tuck him behind. I think, I'll have you in the run up towards Regia, because as they did then, it was the case on exit. It was a drag race up towards the corner, and well, you can see here, Skinner initially having Dory tucking behind, but Dory started to get the overspeed as they went through Curva Grande. He didn't quite get it at first, in fact, tucked back in for a little bit more toe, and then coming up into the Regia chicane, Dory went to the inside, Skinner on the outside, back on the brakes, and in the end, Dory had the inside line and took the position back. And as we now look back to the live pictures here, Skinner still on the back of Jamie Dory with not long to go. And as they roll on through here and make the way onto what for them we suspect will be the penultimate lap. Well, it is the case. Well, Dory thought he got it done. Skinner's coming back at him here, and as they make their way down, it's going to be the case that Skinner's going to pin Dory to the inside of what is a tricky box situation with Cranley Swash there. And as Dory's had to lift off and tuck him behind. That was very smart from Skinner to use the GT3 car to pin Dory down. But as they make the way now all the way out of Retfilio and up towards Regia, I think Dory will be thinking, okay, if that's the way we're going to play it when there's some GT3 traffic and I try and pass you, I might have to do the same. But to be fair, no contact was made. It is all fair in multi-class racing. We've seen it in plenty of series today. And as they battle their way down in towards Regia, we can see that Jamie Dory trying to come back around the outside. Can't quite find the space, but Skinner gets it wrong. A bit of snap over still on the corner exit. And Dory takes the place back in the end as they make the way through the two Lesmos. As they come on through into the pits, I'm sorry to announce it, ladies and gentlemen, Alistair Kirk could not quite go in. He was empty on fuel with only what for him, I think, is 1 lap remaining of racing, and he's had to come on in, and that has dropped him all the way down from P2 right on the back of Tom Edmonds down to P5 when it's all said and done. And Alistair Kirk was trying to make that fuel tank go for so long, as Ed Lack is also into the pits, and that's going to promote Rob Sunik up into P2 right at the end. So it is the case, the fuel is critical for so many drivers, with the race leader Chris Daines now on the final lap of this race, as the timer will hit the hour mark before he finishes his current lap number 37. But I wonder how many other drivers here are perhaps looking at the fuel gauge right now and thinking, have I got enough to go to the end? Because we've just seen a few come into the pits, and really now it's the case that everyone's on their final laps, and that will mean now there's no chance to come on in. You've simply got to run it to the end. Well, we can see that Jamie Dory battling with Dan Skinner. Once again, Dan Skinner on the inside, Dory on the outside. They roll on through, and Skinner takes the move, but we must cut away from them, ladies and gentlemen, because he makes his way out of Wes Ascari. It has been the case he's had to recover this race on the back of the class, but he has fought his way all the way out towards the front. And as he makes his way through the final corner, it is going to be a return to a perfect round of racing, because he comes on through, and it will be Verano Motorsports' Chris Daines once again who takes the win, 2 out of 2 in the feature race here at Monza in the Apex Racing Academy. He is your winner, and behind him will be Tom Edmonds, who makes it back-to-back victories for Algid Esports in the GT3 Pro class. Superb driving from the pair of them, the winners in their respective classes. It will then be the case that Gavin Gardner will take P2 in the GT3 Pro class, and a well-deserved P2 for Verano Motorsport, and Matthew Hodges will come home at P3 for CXR Project Black in a brilliant drive. And well, meanwhile, Ed Lack, as he comes on through, in fact, Robert Sunik running out of fuel just to the finish line, so Ed Lack will come on P2 in the end, albeit by a circumstance, and Robert Sunik runs out of fuel and has to drift to the line, P3 in the LMP2 Pro class. But meanwhile, we've missed him, but he's come across the line, your winner in the GT3M class. There he is, Matt Evans at NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK. He's brought home the win, only 2 seconds clear of second place man Nigel Stock, as they roll the way in front. I think both of their cars are pretty critical on fuel. Well deserved from Matt Evans and Nigel Stock, and P3 in the end went to Matthew Addy with a brilliant drive, just beating Joe McManus to that podium in the end. But to be fair, for the TGC Bottom Split Heroes driver, they will treat that, I think, today as a win. They had to work very hard to keep that Porsche up there in the top 5, and they've done it, with Darren Doherty finishing at P5, 3.5 seconds behind. But my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what a fantastic race from start to finish. We thought the sprint set things up well. We couldn't have predicted how it would have all played out in what was the feature, but I can tell you now, as he gradually makes his way around here on his cool down, his parade lap, I think Chris Daines will be thinking to himself, it all went wrong at the Hockenheim last week. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, but today it's all back on track. The man is flying, and well, he had to fight really hard for it versus Ed Lack, but in the end he made it count. And well, he wouldn't have known at the time that Lack would have had to have come into the pit to take on a small bit of fuel. But to be fair, the CXR Project Black driver, and indeed the team behind Edward Lack, will be very proud of that drive there. A very valiantly fought battle for the win, but in the end a P2, but a well-deserved P2. And well, he will be thinking to himself right now, I've got the ability to take Daines on, and if I've got the pace to match him, I could take a few wins off of him. I had to wait and see how the season plays out later. But as he comes on through, and should also credit be given to Tom Edmonds here, who has just been flawless in the GT3 Pro class throughout the entirety of the evening, just not put a foot wrong. Very unfortunate for Carmelo Mettello, the way it went wrong in the feature. We were expecting him to be battling up with Edmonds, but in the end, Edmonds sealing the deal. And then as we look here, we can see our top 3 in the GT3 AM class, and I believe, in fact, they're pushing Matthew Addy along here. No, they're not. That's just the camera being deceptive, but we can see it. And Matt Evans in the end with that win. We didn't get to see too much until at the finish line. It is the case, having broken away from Nigel Stock and his teammate there, Matthew Addy, the two of them running together, and they came home P1 at P3 in the end. And I think Addy will be looking over right now. There's a little bit of tap between the two of them, a little bit of banter between the two as well. It's the case. I think Emmons will be having a hefty bill now for that Audi that's got a bit of damage, and Addy will be grinning from ear to ear with that. But at the same time, the two of them came together, and well, good to see the two teammates having a laugh. Nigel Stock's already come into the pit, and Matthew Addy will be thinking he's got to try and take some wins now, given the fact that Emmons really seems to be in control of the wins for NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK in that GT3 AM class. But we'll wait and see. There's plenty of circuits and rounds to come. But I can tell you what is to come immediately, ladies and gentlemen, and those are your race results. So let's take you through them here, subject to stewards' inquiries post-race, of course. So after the second race of the season, the feature race at Monza in round number 7 of the PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you by NXTGEN Racing, iRacing in collaboration with Apex Racing Academy for Lobby 1. It is the case that Chris Daines took the overall win and the win in the LMP Pro class by 29.1 seconds in the end ahead of Ed Lack. But that doesn't tell the full story of that gap. It was a brilliant battle between the two of them, and Lack in the end just dry of fuel coming onto that final lap. Lack P2 ahead of Robert Sunik, running out of fuel when he thought he had P2 at the finish line, but running out of fuel with only about 300 metres to go. Still a great P3 for the Dutchman. And then Gaz Williams and Dan Skinner completing the top 5 ahead of Jamie Dory P6. Tom Edmonds in the end coming home P7 overall, and that is the win in the GT3 Pro class. A brilliant drive from Tom Edmonds, and Alstrid Esports will be laughing to the bank with regards to the fact they've just taken a double win at the circuit where the Porsche should be at its weakest. And will the circuits following tonight will be circuits that will favour the Porsche just as much as any other GT3. They're much more balanced and well-round circuits. And then we have Gavin Gardner and Matthew Hodges P8, P9 completing the GT3 Pro podium. Carmelo Motello, P10, completing the top 10 there. Matt Emmons, P11 overall, the winner in the GT3M class in a brilliant drive to victory with Alistair Kirk, P12. Nigel Stott and Matthew Addy, P13, P14, completing the GT3M podium. Joe McManus, P15. Darren Dottie, P16. Jordan Pope, P17. And Stuart P. Taylor, P18. And behind them in the standings, but not to be forgotten about, not Callum Jenkins first. Sean at Cranley Swash, P19. A difficult day of racing for Cranley Swash, but he'll come back strong next time out, I'm sure, for the Verano Motorsport driver. Ahead of Callum Jenkins, the privateer, P20, Stefan Albanese, P21, Phil McDougall, P22 with that retirement, Adam Delmont with retirement, P23, and Kevin Smith, unfortunately, not able to make it to the grid due to technical issues in the Porsche 911, last but not least, P24. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a brief 4 to 5 minute break in preparation for our post-round interviews for our specially selected drivers. Don't go anywhere, or if you are going to go anywhere, it might be a case just grab yourself a quick cup of tea, but we're back to hear from some of our drivers in a brief while, and we'll be interested to hear their thoughts after 2 very tricky races at Monza. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are good to go for our post-round interviews with our drivers in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. And what you can see here, we've got a good mix of drivers. We've got our LMP Pro class driver of Chris Daines, our winner overall, I'd say, picking as many points as he possibly could tonight. And definitely interested to hear how on form he feels following tonight's races. And then we've got 3 of our GT3 AM drivers, hearing from Sean Cranley Swash, Matt Emmons, and Nigel Stock. Of course, let's kick off with Chris Daines, bringing him into the interview room. And as he joins us into the interview room, Chris, the Hockenheimring was around, I think, to forget, but tonight you were on flyer, but you had to work hard for it, particularly in the feature. How do you feel Monza has treated you today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was really looking forward to this one. This is one of my stronger tracks here, and coming into it, I was quietly confident and mixed emotions, I think, today. But yeah, really happy with both races, and there's not much more I could have done than that. So yeah.
Oh, indeed. And breaking it down in terms of the different stages of tonight, qualifying, we saw a very close qualifying battle between yourself and Gaz Williams. Gaz just pipping you to pole position in the end by, if I remember correctly, it was 0.04 of a second. Did you always feel it was going to be nip and tuck between yourselves, or was it the case that the traffic didn't perhaps fall the way you wanted it to in terms of slipstream?
Yeah, so I mean, I went into this one knowing that I probably wouldn't get pole. I think I said it in the chat earlier as well, because I think all the 8 drivers that turned up tonight, at least one of them has a teammate that was towing them around, and I was on my lonesome. And as soon as I got behind an LMP car to tow me around, they'd pull over and not give it to me because they didn't want to. So I knew it'd be tough to get the pole position. And I think, to be fair to Gaz, I looked at his lap and he only got a little bit of tow from his teammate down the back straight and then coming out of turn 1. So he didn't get loads of slipstream. So I think that was just done on pure pace. So, but yeah, I was pleased with P2.
Oh, indeed. And then going into what was the sprint race, we saw a very interesting start to the race, whereby side by side versus Gaz Williams down into turn number 1, and then a little tap on the rear end going into Retifido seemed to give you the boost you needed to go up the inside for the rest of the chicane.
Yeah, that was a bit touch and go there because it was quite it was a bit of a larger hit than probably what it looked like on the broadcast, because I really had to work the steering wheel to keep that car in a straight line because I either was going straight on or I was spinning, and somehow I decided to try and get to the corner without overshooting it, and somehow kept it in a straight line. But yeah, that tap was a bit sketchy. I really wasn't expecting that. But yeah, going into turn 1 was fantastic. Me and Gaz, and I just spoke to Gaz now, and it was basically, I'm not braking. When are you going to brake, sort of thing, So we just both were looking at each other, pretty much thinking, well, who's going to brake first? Then we almost both overshot the corner. So yeah, it was a fantastic battle into turn 1.
Oh, most definitely. And then after that, having established the lead coming out of the corner and holding on through Regia chicane for the opening lap, we saw the gap between the two of you gradually open out. But it seems as though when the GT3 traffic hit towards the end of the 15-minute race, that's when you really opened up the gap. Did you feel as though you were waiting for the traffic to come, or was it sort of one of the situations whereby you felt as though you were going to gradually open that space up?
So yeah, I mean, already this week I've done quite a few IMSA and LMP2 fixed races, and but both of those events are at Monza this week. So last week, apologies. And it was it's doing those races has really helped sort of manage traffic and knowing exactly when to lift. So going into the I'm terrible at corner names, apologies, but going into the second to last corner, the fast left-hander, right-hander before the last corner, it's knowing if you know you're going to approach that GT3 car, it's knowing to actually lift off a little bit earlier and not sit right up his backside into that first part of that, into the fast left right-hander, and it's effectively lifting off slightly so you can get a better exit, rather than being stuck behind them for that duration, because the low power band in the LMP2s will really hurt you. So you've got to keep those revs high. So the best thing to do is to lift off, let the GT3 go through the corner, and then put your foot down to try and carry that speed through, so you can time the overtake out of the corner rather than through the corner.
Oh, definitely. And we did see a number of examples of yourself employing that technique in order to find your way past the traffic, indeed battling. And after you secured the win in the sprint, the feature was quite, and coming back to your point much earlier on, with regards to being a mixed emotions evening, it seems as though the feature was quite mixed emotions because you started making your way through the field very rapidly. Then it was a brief off at Lesmo 1 with a bit of contact, which saw you have to do it all again.
Yeah, frustration, I think that one was. I must admit, I had a little bit of a shout. Um, uh, I'm not going to talk about the incident because it's not right to talk about the incident. But yeah, I went through the field pretty quickly. It was nice, and catching up to the CXR cars, I think they were. And unfortunately, yeah, got a bit of a tap on the rear end as I was on the inside, so that put me into a spin. And then yeah, I had it all to do. I was 6 seconds behind 7th place and over 20 seconds behind the leader. And I thought, okay, well, best thing I can do now is just to save fuel and just keep dumping the clutch, because I knew it was going to be a close two-stopper. So I thought if I could one stop it, then at least that's 20 seconds I can gain back. So as I was saving fuel, I felt like I had probably more pace than the leader was, even saving fuel. So I was quietly confident I was going to get in the top 3 at least. But yeah, to come away with a win over 29 seconds ahead was pretty shocking, actually, because I thought the others would have saved fuel while they were out front. I thought that would have been a perfect time for them while I was at the back there.
Oh, indeed. And that battle towards the end between yourself and Edward Lack going on for the best part of what was 10 minutes, side by side, weaves here and there, looking for those dummies, those feints into corners. Just take us through that from your perspective, because it was a classic battle. Indeed, many tuning in absolutely loved it.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, great respect there shown between both drivers, myself and Ed Lack. And yeah, I think I was approaching that battle a bit more on the caution side, because I thought, well, I think at the time when I caught him, there was about 7 laps left. And I thought to myself, if I make a move and I get a hit on the rear end, it's either going to cause damage, or I'm going to get a slowdown by going off, or get a 4X or whatever. So I just thought I'd play it safe and try and force him into a mistake, and try and fake the inside moves, that the other, and try and make him lock up. But he didn't really make any mistakes. So I thought, 4 laps remaining, I've got to make the move. And I knew I had enough fuel to get to the end, but I did notice that Ed pitted 1 lap earlier, so I knew he didn't have enough fuel unless he magically had some fuel saving button that he was pressing. So I kind of thought that he was going to pit again. So I quickly made the move and pulled away just enough to break the toe. And then lo and behold, the last lap he had to pit, so it sort of took the pressure off right at the end there. But yeah, it was great battling with Ed there, and I really was trying to get the move done early on. But then when I couldn't get past him, I thought, well, we'll just try and force him into a mistake. So yeah, good racing, great racing. I really, really enjoyed it.
Indeed, but I do have to ask you one question. When you probably saw on your timing screen that just before the final lap started, with you at the helm of it, that Lack came into the pits to take on a tiny bit of fuel, did you think to yourself, oh, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have battled him so hard all the way through?
I think if I'd have known that, I probably wouldn't have even bothered trying to push that hard on those old set of tyres, because I must admit, I went across the line with 0.2 litres left of fuel, so 0.3 litres left of fuel. So yeah, it was touch and go. So again, I nearly pitted myself, but if I knew he had to pit, then yeah, to answer your question, I wouldn't have battled with him that hard. But it was all fun. Yeah, I must admit, it was very fun.
Oh, most definitely. And taking the fun out from Monza to our next venue, which is Spa-Francorchamps in a week's time. The second of our 2-hour rounds await. How are you feeling for the Belgian circuit?
Okay, so I said, I said one of them. There's a track, or a couple of tracks coming up which I didn't particularly enjoy. Well, this is one of them. I don't get on well at Spa in an LMP car for some reason. I have no idea why. And it's one of the frustrating tracks for me, because I think it's just because it's so long. There's a lot of sweeping corners. I don't know what it is. I can go out Nordschleife, quicker than some of the quick guys in LMP, but at Spa, it's one of these tracks that I just can't get to grips with. So we'll have to do a bit of practice there, I think, before we start giving it the big one.
Oh, we'll be very interested to see you take the Verano Motorsport Dallara machine to Spa in a week's time, and hopefully that practice will pay dividends, but we can only find out when the racing takes place. But until then, congratulations on your double victories tonight, and thank you once again for joining us in the interview room.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thanks a lot, mate.
Have a lovely evening.
Bye-bye.
So hearing there from Chris Daines, and when he talked about that mixed emotions, you can understand where he's coming from, particularly in the fact that in the sprint, things went very well, made the move, albeit it was the case of that little bump, and as he said there, very interesting. We didn't really see it on camera, the nature of the impact where he was tapped in the behind. I think it was Ed Lack who gave the tap, I may be wrong, but it was the case that that tap was actually a lot more aggressive behind the wheel of Chris Daines' machine. He had to straighten the car out at very short notice, but in catching the car so well, it actually pointed him right towards the apex of turn 2, and gave him that impetus to take the place off of Gaz Williams, and then making his way through the GT3 chaff, he was able to keep Williams at bay, and in the feature having to cut his way up through the order once, and then having to do it again after that contact at Lesmo 1. But to be fair, it led to a brilliant showdown right at the end of the race between himself and Ed Lack, and that's what we'd love to see, and it'll be interesting to see whether Daines can put the demons of Spa to bed next week, or whether they will resurface. We'll have to wait and find out. But with that, we must now come to another Verano Motorsport driver, and that is Sean Cranny-Swash, who will bring into the interview room very shortly. As we just give him the heads up that it is his turn. And well, Sean Cranny-Swash this evening, a P2 in the sprint, but a P8 in the feature, mixed events, but we'll wait to see what he thinks about it as he joins us in the interview room now. And Sean, a difficult night today at Monza, a second place in the sprint, but an 8th place in the feature. Just what are your thoughts on Monza? Was it kind to you, or was it the case that it's a night not to remember?
Do you know what? Coming into tonight, I had an awful practice on Monday. Tuesday was really bad as well. I think I was about a second and a half off the pace of the guys up at the front in AM alone. So I think third slowest in all practice last night. So I wasn't expecting much coming into today. And today, the first race, it just clicked. It really did. And I think I was playing with the brake bias enough to get an advantage on the last few laps of the race, because the guys around me were saying I seemed to just take off in the last couple of laps, and that allowed me to catch up right on the back of P1 in the sprint, which was really good. I was hoping if there was another lap I could have got around him, but there you go.
Oh, goodness me. So it sounds as though it's been quite the evolution since the practice session last night and early this week into today. And that's absolutely brilliant to hear how it's evolved in terms of your pace over the course of the racing tonight. And focusing specifically on qualifying, we saw you qualify a P4 in the session, but not too far for the top 3. Does that give you additional confidence going into the sprint to think, you know what, a podium's definitely possible here and the pace is coming?
Practice again, I was quite slow today. I wasn't able to put a lap together. I think I was quite lucky whereby a lot of the guys kind of left the track or went into the pits as I was doing my quali lap, so I didn't actually get a draft, but I was able to just keep consistent laps going through the qualifying session, and I think I just grinded down that time over the course of the 20 minutes.
Oh, it definitely showed. And then coming on to the sprint race, and back to your point earlier with regards to really building up pace as the sprint went on, we saw earlier in the race you made some good gains, kept it clean and out of the way. Was that the plan with regards to the sprint race, to try and stay out of trouble, given it's 15 minutes and everyone's in a mad scramble really to gain places, particularly in the run down towards turn 1 on the opening lap?
Yeah, I had a bit of experience earlier in the week when they had the Monza races at last official week. I got a couple of net codes into turn 1, so I was quite wary that if I was near anyone, something the same might happen again. But from my point of view, all the racing was really clean. There's a couple of door bangs as you get through the first few chicanes into the first couple of corners as well, first couple of laps. But it was just keeping my nose clean, really, making sure I was hitting the apexes, making sure I was giving room, because a lot of the guys, they do like putting the pressure on early on, giving them the room, let them go past if they're going to have the edge on me coming into the corners, and just follow them through. And I think that tactic worked. I was quite lucky though in the sprint. The guys behind me had a bit of an accident coming out of Ascari, I think it was, and it gave me the chance to pull away as well.
Oh, indeed. But capitalising on that and chasing down Darren Doherty, as you say, if you had one more lap, you felt as though you could have potentially had an opportunity at taking the win. I do have to ask, did that give you more confidence going into the feature and that prospect of being back on the podium once again, or potentially being able to take the win in the feature?
Yeah, totally. I think I got fastest lap in the sprint, so I knew the pace for some reason was there. And then I saw that the track temp was really low, and that worried me a bit, because I think my gains were made from being able to manage the brake bias on the car, being the only setting that we can actually change. So what happened in the sprint, I was able to gain quite quickly over that 15 minutes in the last couple of laps. When it came to the longer feature race, there was still that gain there as I was going through the session, particularly after I came back after my disconnect. But it wasn't. It was more gradual. So my lap times came on later in the race.
Indeed, and then coming on to the feature race, that unfortunate disconnect early on the race, putting you a lap down. I would presume it was technical issues, but just take us through that in terms of, because you started off quite well in the race and then just a sudden disconnect and you've had to do it all again.
Yeah, I was really excited. At that point, I was starting to close on the pro guys in front. I think my teammate was just ahead of me, and I could physically see the cars coming towards me, and then going through Lismo 2, had a power cut. The power went out, the computer came back on again, and I came straight back into the race. What was quite bad about that is it left me with needing two extra laps if I was to fill the car up in the pits. So I elected to not fill the car up and just run the full car dry, and I was able to get through with about 0.2 litres all the way to the pits, put 60 litres in, went again, and with about 8 laps to go, I knew I wasn't going to make up any places. All the guys were staying on track because by joining back in late, all you've got to do is hope that someone crashes, and no one was crashing out, particularly in the AM class. So I went in, I changed tyres with about 8 to go, and then I tried to put in a few hot laps just to get that extra bonus point for the fastest lap, and I think I got it with a couple of laps to go.
Dean, just double checking our timing screens right now. It does look like you just pipped Matt Edmonds to the post by 100th of a second for the fastest lap. So those 2 points will be in your account going into the next round, as far as I can see. And speaking of the next round, obviously a bit of mixed fortunes tonight. Great result in the sprint, difficult day in the feature. But Spa, the second of our 2-hour super endurances in a week's time. How are you feeling for the Belgian circuit?
Oh, I've got a bit of a story of Spa. Last year we did the 24-hour race there. We were 2 laps up, 17 hours gone, and a car came from an off-track position and wiped us out and ruined our race. So there's definitely something I need to fix going into next week. I know I'm going to have the pace there, which is really pleasing. The Lambo is the only GT3 I've run there as well, so I'm excited for that one. I think I perform better in the longer races as well. I'm more used to the ESS and the endurance anyway, so having those longer races where people seem to get fatigued a lot, particularly near the end, I think I've just got that edge where I have been doing quite long races throughout my time in iRacing.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing how you deploy that edge in a week's time. But until then, Sean, congratulations on the results today. I appreciate the feature wasn't quite the one that you wanted, but still, results to take forward to next time. And thank you as always for joining us in the interview room.
Yeah, cheers, Paul. Thank you.
Have a lovely evening. So hearing that from Sean at Cranley Swash, mixed fortunes tonight, but again, great momentum and a lot of courage and confidence coming through, Sean. You can hear it in his voice, particularly with the fact that in the earlier practice sessions earlier this week, wasn't quite there on the pace, but as he went through qualifying and into the sprint race night, really come alive, particularly with managing the brake balance on the car. The one thing they can change on the car is that brake bias, and working out very well for Cranley Swash. And it'll be interesting to see how he carries that momentum into the Super Endurance race at Spa. I can imagine he will be an outsider compared to the relative championship contenders, but he'll be an outsider for the win. And I think if he's got that edge that he's referring to with regards to the longer endurance races and he can deploy it, he could be the one to run away with the win come the end of the 2 hours, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, speaking of someone who's been waiting, it's the case that Matt Evans has been waiting in the interview room for his post-round interview, and it's only fair that we come around to bringing him in. And, well, Matt Evans tonight, of course, bringing home the 3rd place in the sprint in what was a bit of an up-and-down sprint race, and the win in the feature after having to battle for the win versus Nigel Stock. And, well, let's bring him on into the interview room and hear his thoughts on what has been a strong performance tonight. So as we bring Matt into the interview room, Matt, a great pair of results on the board tonight in the Audi ARA, a 3rd place in the sprint and a win in the feature. Has Monza been kind to you, or was there more out on the table?
To be honest, I think it's been kind to me. It's not one of my favourite tracks, and I didn't think it'd suit the Audi as well as it did. To be fair, as you all saw the battle with Nigel, I knew I had to get him in the middle section. The Audi being quickest there, but yeah, I must have. I'm feeling a bit lucky, but I'm happy to take it.
Well, indeed, sometimes you have to take the results as they come, particularly when luck is there. You've got to seize on it, and we'll dissect in your evening to an extent. Starting off in qualifying, of course, a great qualifying session, a battle between yourself, Darren Dartley, Nigel Stock and Sean Cranley Swash for pole. 3rd place in the end on the grid. Do you think that was the best you could get out of the car, given the draft, the traffic, and how everything played out?
No, in all honesty, I think I got a slow down on lap 4 after I got past Sean, and then had to concede the position back and fell behind Matt Addy as well. I'd like to think I could have possibly got second or possibly even the win.
Oh, indeed. And then translating that through into the sprint with a lot of pace still in the car to be released. Of course, the sprint race, a good start for yourself, battling all the way down to turn 1 with your peers. And it looked as though you were settling quite nicely into the race until a bit of contact with your teammate.
Yeah, me and Matt seem to have magnets attached to our cars somewhere, I think. Yeah, we've both looked at it and we both agreed there was nothing else either of us could have done. I was as far over the curb as I could physically get without getting an off track. And Matt just hit the inside curb a bit too hard, and it sent him into the side of me.
Indeed, an unfortunate incident, but in the end, able to bring home the 3rd place for the team in the sprint and translating that into the feature. Very tricky race out there, particularly in regards to when to go for that pit stop. And we seem to see yourself and Nigel Stock both, well, yourself going for the undercut, Nigel Stock going for a bit of, no, sorry, you going for the overcut, Nigel Stock going for the undercut, and it all played out all the way down to the run to turn 1. Was that always the plan, that you're going to try and jump in on the strategy and then get in the slipstream?
No, not in the slightest. I just thought to myself, I'm just going to stay out until Nigel pits, and then if he goes late, then I'll try and go early. But he went early, and I saw Tom Edmonds in front of me, and I thought, right, I've got a tow here. I can't pit with an empty fuel load, still fresh tyres, and a tow. It would be silly. So I thought I'll go for the overcut, go for it. And I had when I came out the pits and saw him coming up in my mirror, I had flashbacks to Verstappen and Hamilton going into turn 1 at one point. I must admit, it made me a bit worried. But no, every credit to Nigel. That was probably one of the best races I've ever had on iRacing. It was excellent, close racing, and it's the one thing I can always say about when I race Nigel. It's always strong and fair.
Well, indeed, very respectful racing between the two of you, but in the end, picking the right time to strike, being so close in the draft of Nigel's Mercedes over the course of the lap on the straights, not able to overtake him on the straights, but being able to stay right there with him. And as you said earlier, having the ability to outrun him in the corners, the Audi being very strong there, was it the case you always thought to yourself, it has to come in the corners, it's never going to happen on the straight?
Yes. I thought every lap, I thought, right, I need to exit corner the first chicane really well, get a good traction, stay on his bumper, and then I can get him into the second chicane. Or if not there, I can get him into the Lesmo. But I knew as soon as I got out the second Lesmo and up to Ascari, if I wasn't close enough, I'd have to sit behind him and wait another lap because that Mercedes was so strong in a straight line. And coming out of the Ascari, it was another level.
Well, indeed, and well, speaking of taking things to another level, of course, with Nigel Stock dropping some key points in the sprint, it does mean it puts you back on top in the GT3 AM Championship. But I do have to ask, this back and forth between the two of you, and of course, Matthew Addy getting some key points as well to close the gap between you, and Sean Cranley-Swash also putting in some very good laps today, particularly in the sprint. Are you feeling it's a two-way fight for the championship, or is it a case that we've got multiple contenders now creeping in?
I think we're going to have multiple contenders yet because we've still got that all-important drop score to take into consideration yet. And looking back at my scores, I'm dropping quite a bit. I think Nigel's dropping quite a bit as well. So I think it's going to come down to one of the last 2 or 3 rounds, and it's going to be a lot closer than I think.
Well, indeed, and speaking of upcoming rounds, we head to Spa in a week's time for the second of our Super Endurance rounds. 2 hours of Spa, yay or nay for the Audi R8 in your capable hands?
100% yay. It is probably another one of my favourite tracks. I've done a lot of practice around it, and the Audi just seems to be at home with it.
Well, be interested to see how you get on there. I mean, you took the win at Daytona back in round number 4. Can you make it 2 out of 2? We can only find out in a week's time. But until then, we have to wait patiently. And I should say, congratulations on your double podium tonight, including the win, Matt. Thank you for joining us in the interview room, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit for round number 8.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Have a lovely evening.
And you.
So hearing there from Matt Emmons, and a lot of positives to take from tonight for Matt Emmons, particularly the exploiting of the handling characteristics of the Audi in the second core sector, the second Formula 1 sector, if you will, of Monza, to take the fight to the faster cars around him, particularly Nigel Stock's Mercedes. But again, that awareness from Emmons with regards to the drop scores later in the season, and also on top of that, with respect to what is the fact that there's a lot of competitors within the field. It's not just a two-way fight in the championship, but you've got the likes of Sean Cranley-Swash, Matthew Addy, just to name 2 individuals who will capitalise on those points when there are drop results, and they will be right there. And you can imagine that anything can happen at Spa, and indeed in the final, what would be the final 5 rounds of this championship, we are far from over yet, and it is all to play for as time presses on. But speaking of time, it is time for us to now interview our final interviewee for this evening, and that is Nigel Stock, the GT3 AM driver. Let's bring him in to the interview room after what was mixed fortunes for a difficult day in the sprint, after what looked to be a strong performance to a win, all going wrong at the second chicane, and then a second place comeback in the feature. Whereas we bring Nigel in. Nigel, a day of mixed emotions, I can imagine, for you, because it was looking to be a win, or at least a podium in the sprint, and then it all went a bit wrong there, but a fight back for a second place in the feature. How do you feel your night's been?
Yeah, a bit up and down. I suppose it's good that Darren Doherty finally got his win and stopped me stealing it. So I suppose there's always good things, but I mean, I was just relieved to get some good points in the second race.
Oh, indeed. And breaking your evening down, it was the case in qualifying. We saw Darren Doherty just take pole off of you by a small margin in the end. The two of you separated by 2 tenths. Do you feel as though that was the best lap you could deliver out there in qualifying, or was it not quite the way you wanted it to be, given the way traffic works out at Monza?
I don't know. I think with Monza, it's a bit of a. I like the track, but the track doesn't seem to like me. I sort of struggled to get sort of into the groove with Monza than I do on other tracks, and I think I was about a tenth or two up on one lap afterwards, but then I went wide, I think, coming out the second Lesmo and lost the lap, so I may have been able to get pole, but I thought second place, and it was ahead of like main championship rivals, so I thought that'd be pretty good, so something to build on, but then it didn't go according to plan, so yeah.
Indeed, it was unfortunate in the sprint, but a good start for yourself in the sprint, holding on to lead and battling with Darren Doherty for some time. But then the second chicane just seemed to catch up. Just take us through what happened there. It looked as though the rear completely kicked out.
Yeah, just I don't know. I practiced yesterday and today and qualifying, and never had a problem there. And it just that, but I felt like I braked in the same pace and did everything. But just as I turned in, the back end decided it didn't want to stay, and I just went round, and it just as long. Sort of one of those long slides that just doesn't want to come back. And then I sort of got an image of Vettel and Hamilton from a few years ago when they bumped there and Vettel spun there. So I thought, we sat here for ages now waiting for everyone else to come out, so and go by.
Well, indeed, I can see the parallels you're drawing there. But in the end, recovered to P7 and took some good points from that race and placing yourself relatively well for the feature. The fact that you had that mishap in the sprint race, does that change the way you plan to run the feature in terms of strategy?
I suppose so, but I was more just sort of just focused on trying to survive the first bit of the feature race, which is what I always try and do. I sort of, when I'm at the back, I sort of just let all the pros go and then sort of try and get a rhythm from there, where I was trying to sort of get in front and try and break away, but I just couldn't do it. The slipstream was just too powerful. Every time I tried it, got in front, so whoever was behind me would just sort of catch back up again. So.
Oh, indeed. But keeping that in mind, of course, when the pit stops did occur, yourself and Matt Emmons doing the opposite of one another, with yourself going for what was the undercut on the field. Very close in the run to turn one when Matt Emmons left the pit lane. Just take us what was going through your mind at that point, because it was almost neck and neck into the braking zone.
Yeah, well, I did want to go about a lap or two more before pitting, but I saw the pros were coming up behind us, the pro GT3, so I thought I'll get in and get out the way, sort of thing. And then when I came out the pits, it said I only got 0.5 on my fuel calculator, so I was a bit worried about with fuel. And then I saw somebody that said, so I think Crucci said there was some people coming out the pits, and I saw that it was him, and I thought, oh, this might be a bit close. And then as it came down to it, my crew chief did I didn't get Car inside. I got Car inside, and then he went quiet for a minute, so I was sort of wondering if he was still there. And then I quickly looked and saw he was, and then I just tried to get his best sort of traction out the corner, and it was quite good, I thought.
Indeed, it was absolutely brilliant between the two of you. And as the race went on, of course, Matt Emmons having to stay behind you and stay in the draft. But with a few minutes to go, he just seemed to have the advantage on you going through the chicanes with about 10 minutes to go. Was it the case that just the speed of the Audi through the corners was too much?
It was, yeah, it was a bit of that and a bit of I was getting because my fuel calculator kept getting like I think it was getting down to 0.2 at that point, so I was getting a bit worried, and I was trying to sort of keep up with like pros ahead that have already gotten past, trying to use their slipstream to save a bit of fuel, and I was trying to keep him behind and just thought if and try and just get there, and then he managed to get by, and then I thought well, I'll try and stick with him and sort of use the draft and that to try and save fuel that way. But then I caught when I went through the first chicane, I sort of got a slowdown, and then it sort of ruined that idea. So then I just had to try and save the best I could at the end. And then as I went across the line, it was on 0.1, so it was a bit tight at the end.
Oh, goodness me. That was very tight on fuel, but still coming home with second place, a great result. And now looking ahead into in a week's time, of course, we head to Spa for the second of our 2-hour super endurance rounds. Is it a circuit you're looking forward to in the powerful, beastly Mercedes AMG?
Yeah, it's probably one of my favourite tracks, Spa. It's like that one or Le Mans, the sort of the ones that I've sort of got a little like sort of want to do well at now, because obviously I've done it all the other way. Like I've won every sort of way you can, like won 2 races in one night and won the feature, got fast lap. But the only thing I haven't got now is the 2-hour race, so I want to try and get one of them if I can. And then sort of I feel like I've got the collection then, so.
I love it. I love the idea of getting that collection. And well, we will have to wait and see whether you can add the 2-hour win to your collection in a week's time. But just before we let you go, I do have to ask. We asked Matt this as well. Given the fact that yourself and Matt have been battling back and forth for the championship lead, and really for yourself, you've really come up through the order, particularly in the last 3 rounds, and just established yourself on the scene as being an absolute contender. Do you feel as though this championship battle is between you two, or do you feel as though you've also got the outside effects of Sean Cranley-Swash, Matthew Addy, just to name 2 drivers, and they could be a threat as well?
I think I've proved in these last few races that you can't really count anyone out yet. When there was so like, I mean, what round was this again? I can't remember what round it is now.
7.
But I know that 7, yeah. So there's still plenty of races to go, plenty of points on the board, and especially with these 2-hour races where you get like the extra points that if you like someone wins that race, I think they really set them up quite well. And then there's obviously the drop score as well, so that's always something that could make it interesting towards the end.
Oh, most definitely. And well, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out in due course. But until then, congratulations on your results today, Nigel. We look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time. But as always, thank you for joining us in the interview room.
Thank you for the stream and the commentary, and thanks for having me.
That's no problem at all. It's my pleasure. But with that, have a lovely evening.
And you, bye.
So hearing there from Nigel Stock, and again, do love the approach that Nigel Stock's taken with regards to looking ahead to the future of the 2-hour super endurance round, that he's had back-to-back wins. He's had a perfect score evening, and now he wants to come out fighting to take home a win in a 2-hour super endurance round. I was a bit surprised he didn't say he also wanted to get the fastest lap there, because will his trophy cabinet be fully complete without a fastest lap to go with that win? Perhaps he's starting off small and dreaming big later, you never know. Perhaps it's just a sign of things to come at Spa, and then at Le Mans could he potentially be going all in for the maximum possible point score. But in terms of his night this evening, of course, a difficult day in the sprint, and you have to go back and probably take a look at what exactly happened to cause that moment where he lost it at Regia, because as he was saying that he doesn't know what went wrong, just it was a surprise, because going through all the rhythm of the practice and the qualifying session, even the previous laps, he just took the same braking point, the car just behaved differently, he doesn't know what happened. But in the feature, bouncing back, well, that key point in about the fuel becoming a big concern, and well, the fuel being right on the limit across the finish line. A lot of drivers talking about that, and indeed a concern which he managed to its conclusion. And I definitely wonder how the Emmons stock rivalry and indeed the outside effects of Cranley-Swash, Addy, just to name a few, will play out over the course of the remaining rounds. But speaking of time remaining, We've got no time remaining, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time for us to wrap up. But thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out our official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, our Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a big thank you to our partners without whom we'd not be able to bring you a lobby one of this series, and that is Apex Racing Academy, of course. Their website, apexracingac.com. But we must now look ahead to a week's time. We pack our bags up and we move from Italy to Belgium for the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps for the second of our 3 2-hour super endurance rounds. It will be taking place on Wednesday, the 1st of June 2022. A very different dynamic at a circuit which has a little bit of everything. It will put our drivers on edge and where it will test them to their maximum possible endurance, and we'll have to wait and see who walks away with the big points and prizes come the end of the 2 hours there. But if you haven't quite had your fix of racing action for this week, don't worry, we've got you covered, because this Friday, of course, we'll be bringing you the post-race broadcast of the IMB Racewear Lobby. That's Lobby 2, and that will be on Friday at the same time as of tonight. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from us at Next Gen Racing. That's it for me, your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.